Get started. We got a lot of stuff to cover.
Hold on, drink it
I brought my supper. Got my bag of M&Ms. But I can't eat them. I got a mask on.
Thank you. Everybody gets 3 minutes. Y'all are way too formal. Thank you.
Oh, Lord, we're getting every school.
All right, I think we can call the meeting back to order. And Mr. Langford, I believe you're up.
Yes, sir. So you've seen the district plan. Just to give you a little bit of our timeline this week is in terms of communication. So the district plan goes that you've seen tonight. Of course, will be released after the meeting tonight. Dr. Phillips has recorded a video and an email that will go to teachers with the district plan so they can see it. Tomorrow, our principals will be meeting with their staff and faculty, and they've been working on a communication plan for parents. We, in the speed that this all moves, I've not had a chance to talk to Dr. Phillips from this afternoon, and so when we met with principals today, they felt like they needed a little time to work with their faculty. And they also felt like they wanted it to have a little time for the district plan to sink in. So the school communication plan to parents will roll out Thursday morning at 10 o'clock. So we wanted to give you some viewpoint. So Dr. Phillips mentioned that we brought the principals in and they worked, he presented the district plan to them, and then they worked on a parent communication plan to go out externally, and then internally they worked with they began working with their leadership teams to figure out a lot of the ins and outs of how this would look. So what we wanted to do is give you an insight into what those plans look like. And so we have 3 principals here tonight that are going to share their school plan with you. So first we have Ms. Phyllis Gilman that's going to share her plan. And Mr. Gregory would like for me to let y'all know as Ms. Gilman comes up that she is from God's country. So close to Westmoreland.
I am. I graduated from Westmoreland. So.
Sure did.
I'm from Westmoreland, but I'm now a resident of Portland, so you guys can fight that one out. My name is Phyllis Gilman. I'm the principal at White Hardison in Portland, and I'm honored to be here tonight. And before I begin, I don't want to mention names, but I want to start by thanking Dr. Phillips, Mr. Langford, and I'm not going to say any more names after that because I will leave someone out, but they have worked tirelessly, and I know you know that, and I'll try to say this without tears in my eyes, but they have worked tirelessly to put this framework together and provided us as principals with frameworks to help guide us so that the process would be a little easier on us. And that's come to their expense of probably family time, vacations. So I thank you from the bottom of my heart on behalf of all the principals. We thank you, this team right here, and you all as a board as well. I know your support is there also. But anyway, I will not be too mushy about all that, but we are very appreciative of what our district has done basically since March. We didn't wait, or they didn't wait. Let's see what happens in a week or so. They immediately began plans for us as a district, and what are we going to do for our kiddos? So I'm thankful for that. But I'll just touch on a few things as far as our school plan. They will all be the same in some areas, but as Dr. Phillips mentioned, there are some areas in which we as a school were able to tweak some things to fit the needs of our schools based on size and personnel and that type thing. So I'll just share. I think you may have a copy of my plan, and mine looks very similar to a lot of the elementary school principals. We did collaborate and work together and with our teams to come up with our plans, because as the district does, it's a shared leadership. We don't just sit in an isolated room. We work together on coming up with these things. But the first thing that we're going to do is, when these babies walk through our classrooms, we're going to love them. And we, let them know that they've been missed. They've gone through some trauma. And we have PL plan and things like that to address those needs of those kiddos coming through our classrooms or back into our schools that haven't been in months. So that's one of the first things that we'll do is welcome those kids with open arms, whatever that may look like with social distancing, but we will be there to support them in whatever, they bring with them as far as social, emotional is concerned. But as far as arrival to school, that's one of the things that will be changing for most schools is how the kids enter, how they exit. They can't all gather in the gym anymore like we normally do, or you've normally seen your kiddos come in the mornings and sit in the gym. There'll be places throughout the building that will be supervised for the kiddos to sit, whether it be a hallway or a classroom, and they will be sitting with their class. Some of the discussions that you all had, they will be with their classroom. They will not be sitting with other students in other classrooms. So that's one of the ways that we'll be supporting our district plan. Also, breakfast, eating breakfast. The students that will come in and need to eat breakfast, they will, they will go to the cafeteria. They'll be spread out in there as well, limiting the number of kids. Most schools, we know about how many we have that eat breakfast each morning, so it shouldn't be an issue to spread those kiddos out and ensure that everybody gets the breakfast in the time that they need to eat. As far as serving the meals, one of the things the districts, our nutrition department's doing is they're providing to-go trays, so every meal will be served in a to-go tray, and that I believe the food will be packaged differently than it normally is. Lunch will be the same way. We'll be restricting and staggering the lunch schedules. We've adjusted our master schedules to assure that, most of us are trying to do half capacity in our cafeterias at lunch. Only one class through a line at a time, only one class at a table, and they will be with their classroom all day long. So those are some of the adjustments that we've made as far as serving our meals. Also, as I mentioned, water stations will be provided with the water bottles for kids to have water as they need it. And unfortunately, guests coming into the building at this time will be something that'll have to change at least for the first 9 weeks as far as our kids, parents coming in and eating lunch with our kids. As far as class transitions, hallways, we have adjusted again our master schedules to assure that students, the hallways are not crowded, even in our elementary schools. I think Dr. Phillips mentioned this is a little easier in elementary. They walk in those nice straight lines most of the time on the purple line or the green line, whatever your school colors are. So that's not a huge issue for our kids, but just making sure that we're all going one direction on this side and coming back on the other side. That's one of the changes that we'll make with our transition as far as our hallways are concerned. As far as recess, that physical activity is huge. We want our kids to have that physical activity, and they need it throughout the day. That's to support their overall their well-being. So some of the things that we've done, and I'm fortunate, I'm in a smaller school. I have 3 to 4 grade levels, so we have a large playground. So one of the adjustments that we'll be making at recess is one day, one class might be on the playground equipment, another class may be in a field playing a structured activity with their teacher or just themselves. And we also have a concrete area that there's no traffic on it. So we'll have them spread out that way. And then the teachers will just adjust the next day another classroom so that everybody has adequate time to play on the equipment and that kind of thing. So, and the classes will be spread out hopefully with every 15 minutes. Like if one grade level goes out, another one won't go out until another 15 minutes to hopefully, there's no way to sanitize the equipment after each time the kids go out, but I don't know, this may not be right, but I've heard that this heat will sometimes, I don't know if it kills any germs or whatever, but there'll be some time in between the kiddos going out to the classrooms. Let's see, restroom breaks, same thing, there'll be scheduled restroom breaks. Students will be using the restrooms, and we have some that have classroom restrooms, which is perfect for our kindergarten, especially the new kids coming in this year. But they will be sanitized and often either by the classroom teachers or custodians if they're available with the sanitation, the products that have been provided for us. Let's see. And along with the scheduled bathroom breaks, obviously if a student has to go to the restroom, we are going to let them go. We will not, prevent any kid from using the restroom, but we'll just make sure that it's sanitized as best we can as kids enter and exit the bathrooms. Large group gatherings, we will not have any assemblies, and this may have been noted in the district schedule, but There will not be any large group gatherings, assemblies, those type things. The beginning of the year, we usually have one big celebration on the first day of school. We call it a house party. We go to the gym, we play music and that type thing. And I think we're going to still do that, but we're just going to do it. The kids will stay in their classrooms. I'll be over the intercom playing that music. We want to welcome them back in similar ways that we normally do. It'll just look a little different. Instead of us all being in the gym, they'll be in their classrooms having our little welcome back celebration. All right, let's see. I'll talk real quick about related arts. This may be a question that parents may have as far as related arts, fine arts, physical education, library, those type things. The students will have those classes each day. However, they are staggered to where that the teachers will have time to clean, wipe down backs of chairs, desks, those type things before another group comes in. And we are very thankful the district is providing the supplies for us this year, and each student will have their own set of supplies. Lots of teachers, they gather those things. They have a box, a pencil station, or all the glue goes in one bucket and you share it. We will not be doing those type of things this year. Each student will carry their little pencil pouch or box with them, say to art, or to music, or to library. So they'll have their own supplies in those classrooms as well to help with the shared, so we don't have to share those supplies. And library books, we've kind of toyed back and forth with this, but maybe only checking out books twice a week or twice bi-weekly, on a bi-weekly basis. They'll go to the library each week and have, those opportunities, but to help maybe the transmission of germs on the library books and the teacher having to wipe those down. We're going to look at that a little bit more, but that's what we're thinking right now, is checking out books from the library bi-weekly. They will have books in their classrooms. They'll have access to books. They'll have a book bag with their books in it. So again, that it's not transmitted in that fashion. And the temperature checks, I believe Lisa addressed that. However, what we are going to do we're going to do it at lunch, and we haven't quite decided one of two ways. The teachers, we may have little stations set up outside, like a hallway, where when one class either comes back from lunch or to lunch, she'll just check her kiddos before they walk in the classroom when they come back from lunch. That's kind of what we're looking at right now, to do that check right after they come back from lunch. Dismissal procedure is very similar to our arrival. It'll just be done in staggered increments of going to the buses, going to the car rider line. Instead of everybody sitting in the gym, everybody will be stationed in maybe a classroom instead of dismissing everybody from the gym. Well, those will just be staggered as well. And of course, co-curriculars, keyboards, computers, those type of things will be wiped down. We're very fortunate. We are one-to-one classroom, 2nd through 5th grade with Chromebooks, so all of our kiddos are always assigned a Chromebook anyway. So they'll have their device, and it will be cleaned each day as well. And communication, I think Dr. Phillips he has covered that. The school messenger, the Remind apps, and we have White Hardison Facebook page and then our school website that everything will be pushed out on as well. And registration night, I think Mr. Gregory did ask about that. What we're going to do, and this is different for every school, but July 27th, we're going to do an A to M last name, and July 28th, N to Z, to keep, hopefully cut the crowds down from coming in our schools for registration. We will not have the traditional visiting of a lot of stations, hopefully. Whoops, didn't hit that. It will be ideal if parents will register online first. The online option, I believe, opens tomorrow, I think. So a parent could do the online registration through Skyward, meal plan information, and we've even uploaded the few documents that we have just for our school that parents can print. So ultimately, they could come to registration and have the majority of the work done, and they would just meet the classroom teacher and see the nurse. We always have to have a nurse station. So that's one of the things that we're doing to hopefully help parents out and to limit the amount of time they have to spend in the building. And I believe that's it. That's just a general framework. I'll be meeting further with our leadership team to, work on a few more of the logistics, but that's just the framework of what we'll be doing.
Mr. Daniels.
Yeah, I've just got a quick question. This
Sure.
isn't necessarily related to your school, maybe more of a general elementary
Okay.
question.
Uh-huh.
I know when students get into typically fourth and fifth grade, oftentimes there's multiple teachers they interact with, whether it be science and math or reading. Is a plan that will continue, or will they have one teacher mostly this year, or will we kind of continue teaching the same way we have in the past?
I'll let Phyllis answer for
Well,
her.
we are a self-contained school, so our kiddos, we don't rotate classes. But as far as I understand, Mr. Langford may address this, but as far as I understand, if the schools are not self-contained, that they will have an ELA teacher and a math teacher, but I still believe they travel with their same group. So even if they travel to a different teacher, or I don't know, I believe if I were doing it, this year the kids may stay in the room and the teacher may travel to that classroom. So I'm sure there are those type thought processes put in place for that.
It's different. We have, that's exactly right.
Uh-huh.
We have some schools that are departmentalized, and they switch students, the same group of students between teachers. So that does occur in fourth and fifth in some
Mhm.
schools. We may have a couple that do third, I'm not sure, Scott.
Few.
There are.
A few, but a small number, but good mix of them in fourth and fifth.
Thank you.
Yeah. And I think Mr. Daniels too, like they will follow the same protocol like middle school and high school with the spraying down the high touch areas and everything when they change classes.
Thank you.
Thank you, Phyllis.
I told you.
I learned the best.
Thank you, Ms. Gilman. You know, I should have mentioned this earlier. We wanted to just get a broad scope of the geography and also the size of our schools. So we have Mr. Mitch Flood from Knox Dawson at Drakes Creek Middle School.
Hello, thank you guys for having me here tonight. This is Mr. Langford said, I'm Mitch Flood, principal at Knox Dawson at Drakes Creek Middle School. I also want to echo what Phyllis said about the work done by Dr. Phillips and Scott, and again, the myriad of people. It's just been amazing seeing them work, but also not only the hard work, but I don't think anybody in the administration in Sumner County can say that we didn't have a voice. I mean, the amount of teams and input that they've reached out to us asking us for, and it's been a real it's just been nice to know that everybody's opinions have been heard and voices have been heard. So it's been really appreciated, everything that you guys have done. So thank you again for that. But on to what a middle school plan might look like. Again, this is just for my particular school, so different buildings throughout middle schools look completely different, but just kind of some key things that we've been hitting on. You can see the arrival to school. A big key is multiple entry points, having like bus riders come in one location, having car riders come in another location. Maybe even be able to have some buses go to different areas for some schools to divide up where the buses are. And then what happens a lot at the middle school is you kind of have holding areas when they get there because the school building's open before teachers are in their classrooms or before teachers are set to report to work. So a lot of times you have gyms or cafeterias or whatever. So we have things in place to social distance in those areas, skipping rows in the bleachers, skipping seats, and instead of just using one location, we've expanded our locations that we use, starting to, whenever those areas fill up, go into classrooms, having maybe some spreading out who our monitors are so that they can go into different areas to kind of keep it from being a big, large group in one area. And then another big thing that we'll be asking is, so when our teachers do arrive, kids can report directly to class. So what we'll be asking our parents to do, kind of in partnership. No, we know not every parent can do this, but we don't start till 7:30. Is saying, let's not show up till 7:15 if you're a car rider. If you can, if that's possible, then don't drop your kid off at 6:45 when our doors open, because that just adds to the crowd, just because they want to go socialize, which is what a lot of the kids want to do in the morning. So wait till 7:15, because at 7:15 when they come in, they go straight to the first period class. We don't have to worry about large groups in the gym or the cafeteria or whatever. So again, that'll be something that we just try to work in a partnership with our parents where we can, and try to get them to help us to prevent the large crowds coming in the morning. So that'll be a big one. And then as we do dismiss from these areas, it'll be a very slow, deliberate dismissal. It's not going to be, okay, hey, at 7:15, bell rings, everybody run out, because then why would we have social distance in the first place, right? So it'll be probably about 20 to 25 kids at a time. We wait till they're clear, and then we do the next group. And then, we wait till they're clear, and then we do the next group. So that kind of prevents gathering. And then I'll talk about lockers and halls here in just a minute to hit on that. Serving meals, breakfast. Again, we're gonna only allow breakfast eaters in the cafeteria. That'll be a big crowd breaker upper right there. So that, if you're not buying breakfast in our cafeteria, then you don't need to be in there. When they finish with their breakfast, if the ones who are arriving like 6:45, getting off the buses, if they finish, then we're going to take them somewhere else, take them back to the gym or wherever our next location is, so that new people coming in so that it doesn't become really crowded in there. Lunch, we're going to have our students sit only with their classes that they're already with, so there won't be any cross-contamination. So if you're in class with these 25 kids, then it'll say, Mr. Flood's class goes to these 2 tables, so there won't be any mixing with other kids during that time. We've also used empty spaces around the cafeteria. There's a classroom across the way that we've put that teacher on, planning so that their classroom could be used for cafeteria when we need to for overflow. We've got different places we can put tables just outside of our cafeteria. So our cafeteria only has about 8 tables in it right now, and we've got tables spread out in other places so that there's never, 200 and something kids in one location. So when they are in that location, they're with their class. And then the serving line is only going to be one class at a time. So they're not going to come in and all line up. They're going to go to their tables, and we'll call them one table at a time to go line up. Class transitions. So it's obviously a little bit more difficult at the middle school and high school level, even more so at the high school level. Middle school, what we're going to be able to do, the way our building works, is we're going to be able to stagger dismissal, where we can empty out kind of our front classes beside the main hallway, and they'll have a holding area that they can go where they won't be around other people. And then we dismiss the next class, and then they can either go to an empty class if it's there, or they go wait right outside their classroom. And then we dismiss the next class. And if this class is empty, people can be going in, but we're not going to have a bell where there's 5 minutes, everybody's just going wherever they want to go. We stagger, and when you leave your class, you go straight to your next class. Because we're all, 8th grade hallways, 8th grade hallways, 7th grade hallways, 7th grade hallways, 6th grade. And so you go straight to your next class, which leads to we won't be doing lockers this year. We're going to allow backpacks in class. That's never been allowed. Most middle schools haven't allowed backpacks. We're going to allow those this year. We're not going to do lockers. That's where the biggest trouble is. So they're going to be going straight to their classes. But we've said we're going to have social breaks in class. You have to do. If we're taking away that time, then we expect our teachers to give some social mental breaks in class when we can socially distance properly, so the kids can have that time. Same thing with bathrooms. Teachers are going to have to be lenient. We're going to have to, again, it's a partnership with our kids. You're going to be treated like adults. If I needed to get up and go to the bathroom a minute ago, I went. Like, we can talk to our kids about being adults and growing up a little bit and taking that responsibility. So it's going to be a partnership. So let's see, large group gatherings. Again, activity period, which is kind of like a recess in middle school, just about the equipment. We're going to divide them into 2 large areas by grade level. Not going to let them congregate together. Assemblies, if we did them, they'd have to be small groups, or we'll probably just do virtual where they're in their classes, like Ms. Gilman talked about. Pep rallies, again, I doubt we would do them. If we did, we happen to be on a campus that's very large. If we wanted to go outside and have them with their classes only, just to do some sort of thing, we potentially could. We put that in there, but it's probably not something we would do. Classrooms, be cleaning classrooms between each period. The related arts, again, is kind of the something that people question a lot. PE, we're just not going to use lockers. No lockers in PE. Chorus, we'll probably have, when they're singing, probably have them go to the cafeteria so they can really space out, because there's no chorus during actual lunch. Band, have them spacing out, no cooking or sharing food, things like that. Just not any group gatherings. We're trying to avoid that stuff in some of those related arts classes. Let's see, the clinic. We will, again, with this, they kind of touched on that. We'll be taking temperatures midday. Dismissal. So we're able to kind of have 3 dismissal procedures. We have buses that arrive early, so we dismiss only the bus riders. And they'll go straight to their buses. We're going to put the buses, and we are able to put the buses in 2 different locations. They'll go straight out there, and then we'll wait till they're cleared the hallways. Then we're going to call our car riders out. And then from there, we'll call late buses out to go sit in an area only with the people they're going to be riding the bus with. Then see, school closure. Again, we've talked about, Dr. Phillips has hit on the communication with that. And the communication, we'll have phone calls, text messages, school messenger, emails. We have an app, different things like that. Registration, again, the concerns with the big crowds. We're also doing alphabetical, we're dividing up alphabetical by hour. 4 to 5 is one alphabet. We're doing different grade levels on different nights. And then we've really reduced our stations. That's the big key, is instead of a bunch of stations where there's three people working them and then you have a big line, we've gone bare bones with our stations where really it's just the 3 main things you need to do, and we're going to have 12 people working those, so there should never be a line. It's you come up, you get it, you move on to the next one. We're going to have computers for our teachers to have a Google Doc going so they don't have to be trading papers back and forth with the parents, checking things off. So that's kind of our plan on registration. So I think I believe that hit on everything.
Thanks, Mitch.
Yep. Thank you guys very much.
Good job. Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Flynn. And I hope you'll notice, like, some of the things, probably should have mentioned this at the first two. We wanted our school communication plans to be uniform. So while there will be some differences within them based on the size of the school, they all have the same look. So wherever you are in the district, you're going to hit the same categories of what we communicate out to parents. Mr. Wise mentioned earlier, one of the most important things right now is for us to communicate in an ongoing manner with parents. We felt like this kind of helped us make sure we were communicating in the same areas with our parents. So we've seen an elementary and a middle school. Mr. Wise could probably attest that after 2 tries, like White House finally got a good principal. I like to think that we progressed a little bit when we went from Jeff Cordell to me, but we definitely improved when we went from me to Ms. Miller, and Ms. Miller's going to share her plan to give you a view of a high school plan.
Thank you guys so much for having us here tonight. I really appreciate that. I'm Ann Miller, the principal at White House High School. And again, a lot of the things that I would talk about have been echoed on the district plan through the high school, through the elementary and middle school plan. I think through the planning process, the main thing that I have taken away as a school leader is understanding the perspectives that are taken into account when you go through these kinds of things. So when we started our plan, we started out with the experts, the teachers. We went to our teachers. We have a tremendous wealth of knowledge in our building. So we went to our teachers and we talked to them. We went to our custodian staffs. We went to school nutrition, school nurses, SROs. We started at that level to get that perspective. Moving to the county leadership, Dr. Phillips, the instruction department, Mr. Langford, the instruction department. But then again, we've got maintenance. We've got technology. They've been phenomenal. We've got our school nurses from the district level. We have our custodial staff from the district level to get that different perspective. And then we've got our board members. Mr. Wise is always available, always supportive of what we're doing and what we need. And so it's nice to be able to call him and ask his opinion and get his perspective and kind of get that sounding board. And then of course our stakeholders. We've got parents, we've got business owners, we've got community members that are as curious and concerned about what we're doing with our children as we are as parents and as school leaders. So I think the main thing is understanding that taking all of those perspectives into consideration, there is no perfect plan. So we can scrutinize plans all day long, but understanding to me the multiple perspectives and then all of them working towards the common goal of the safety and well-being of our students. And that's not just a physical safety, that's a social emotional health of our students, of our staff members, of our community, and of our parents. So at the end of the day, listening to the district plan and all of the hours and time and effort that have gone into these, I think keeping in perspective that everyone has their own lens, but it's all working towards the greater good of keeping our kids and our teachers and our staff members safe. And so that's kind of been our kind of filter that we put everything through before we put something on paper. Million ways to do things, but as long as they're all leaning towards that safety issue. So just taking into consideration the preparation that our teachers have had to do, and I know that Mr. Langford's going to touch on this with instruction. Our teachers have worked tirelessly this summer. We've put our teachers through 8-week tutorials on Google Classroom so that they're prepared to educate our kids at a high quality regardless of the model that we're using. I think that's cannot go unappreciated and uncommunicated to the public, that's a huge thing. Like they said, that we've given up vacations and time with their families, and they're digging into the learning because their kids are important to them. They're important to us. So just knowing that we've got that summer training under our belt and that we're prepared for whatever life throws at us when we open our doors in August is huge. And that's going to, take some ongoing support as we go. So I'm not going to go through everything because a lot of our things echo the district plan, echo the middle and high or middle and elementary school plans as well. Main things with high school that are going to look different. Obviously, we have car riders, drivers, and bus riders. We'll ask for the car riders and the drivers to stagger. Bus riders, we will space appropriately. One main thing that we talked about is, as an adult, we talk about social responsibility. As adults, we go into doctor's offices or grocery stores and there's signage, and we're taught and conditioned to be socially responsible. So what we did to kind of be proactive in that is we ordered signage for our hallways and doors and different areas. We have our social distancing reminders that we're going to put on the floor. We have arrows for traffic in the hallways, enter and exits, doors that won't be used, doors that will be used, because at the end of the day, like Dr. Phillips has said, you don't want to mandate something you can't monitor. And we want our teachers to be able to teach and our kids to be able to learn. So teaching them, they are young adults, to be socially responsible with those visible cues, we're hoping is going to just proactively get them in a routine to practice those responsibilities without having to be reminded and kind of mandated by teachers so that they can free themselves up. So that's one big thing that we've tried to do to make that a little more manageable for our teachers. We have ID badges at the high school level, obviously, so we've got on the back of the ID badges, we have printed barcodes so that when they go through a meal line, they can just scan the barcode. They don't have to touch a keypad, and they don't have to wait until their number to the lunch lady so that they can key it in. Hopefully that will help our lines move a little quicker. And on top of the other district, the grab and go utensils and those kinds of things, we've tried to use that badge as a useful tool for them to get in and out of lunch quickly. We will probably open more areas for students to eat. So if you bring your lunch, we've opened both libraries to lessen numbers in the cafeteria. In the morning, students will eat in their designated area. They won't eat in the cafeteria, because another thing we have to consider is our custodial staffs work diligently to keep our buildings clean on a regular basis. And now they've got this huge, daunting task of cleaning up after kids. So whenever we use large spaces, in our plan, we try to be intentional about where we put them. So in the mornings, we're spacing them in the gym, on the mezzanine, socially distanced, so that our cafeteria is not contaminated. We went down a lunch shift and made it longer so that they only had to clean twice, and students had more time to transition in and out of lines and in and out of the hallways. And we also purchased all of our custodians' backpack sprayers to put the cleaning supplies in. So when they're cleaning large spaces like the cafeteria, bathrooms at break, locker rooms if they're feasible, and the gym areas, that they can do that quickly, effectively, without having to, physically just go back and forth and carry big, heavy things. So that's something that we've done to try and be a little more proactive to support our custodial staff, because they work really hard. In our class transitions, we just put so those are actually the images of the things that we ordered. They are in. We're going to do a walk probably later on in the week or first of next week to figure out where the best placement for those for that signage is going to go. Sort of like the middle school, we will not be using lockers. We have lengthened our break times. Again, we have to make adjustments accordingly. So we've lengthened our break times to give our students more time to avoid a line if they need to, avoid a crowd, take a different route, wait for a restroom, use a different restroom. So we've done that to relieve that, but we're also not going to do lockers. They're going to have an opportunity to carry their items in a backpack or leave them in the classrooms. Visitors, I know that's a hard thing, but just in the time that we're living in, we're going to try really hard. The social emotional piece is huge, and parents want to be reassured their kids are safe. So we're going to increase communication because it's more important than ever, but harder than ever. So definitely increase communication and modes of communication so that they don't have to be there in person unless they absolutely have to come to the building. So that's something else that we'll be working on. Cleaning guidelines, basically just, at the high school level, we're going to ask that students sanitize their hands when they enter a space, their own work materials, their own workspace upon entering and exiting a space. So to make sure that we can minimize the cleaning for the teacher and maximize that transition time for them so they can get in and get to learning. That's the goal. A lot of questions around fine arts, CTE, chorus, things like that. What we have done is we already have them, they should be in next week, the face guards for our choir members. They've done a lot of research on what the safest option is. So we ordered the face guards. We have enough for every chorus student first semester to have their own. They'll be left in the classroom. We will sanitize those, but they'll be left in the classroom. And even if more research comes out that that's not a great option in itself, then we've explored maybe we moved to music theory for the first 4.5 weeks or whatever that looks like to keep our students learning but safe. So we've already done that. PE classes, if locker rooms are feasible, we will go in small groups with the custodians cleaning those in between. If not, they'll just dress accordingly and participate in light physical activity as we can see fit at that time. We will also do midday temperature checks. We're going to do those 10 minutes prior to the end of second block in the classrooms like they had talked about with the thermometers, and then we will follow the district guidelines as needed for students who have a temperature or are symptomatic at that time. Dismissal, we will be staggering our dismissal to let car riders and drivers out a little bit earlier so that we can clear the traffic in the hallways, avoid kind of the people gathering to socialize. Early bus riders will be dismissed directly out in front of the building because our buses are waiting there when we dismiss at 3:15. Late bus riders will be distanced in the cafeteria in both buildings. We also have 2 buildings on our campus, so that makes it a little bit easier in ways, but also a little bit more difficult in ways. So we've thought through that. The co-curriculars, again, the library spaces, the computer labs, that's going to be cleaned on a daily basis by our custodial staff. And then whoever is in that space facility-wise, faculty will clean that as needed, and then students will be asked to sanitize their hands and their materials if they use that space as well. So we're trying to make sure we have it covered from multiple angles. And communication, again, we go back to talking about communication is the most important piece of this, and I think sometimes in high school, it's more difficult because we want them to be independent, and they are. So the fact that we have Sumner Connect, which is going to be a great resource for our parents, because our parents are going to have a learning curve trying to figure out what their kids are supposed to be doing on a daily basis. So Google Classroom is going to be huge. There are some features that, thankful to the district for purchasing the enterprise system of G Suite, we're going to have access to things that are going to really make communication easier and more efficient for our teachers and for our parents. We also have, school websites, Facebook, all of those things, school messenger. With two-way communication, we've really talked to our teachers about emailing, phone calling, and if they want to talk to a parent face-to-face, using either Google Meet or Zoom, so we can make sure that they don't lose that personal feel, because there is a lot to be said for seeing your child's educator and talking to them face-to-face. And we don't want to lose that, because we go back to just that social emotional health. We've got their most prized possession for a good part of their day, and that's an important thing and a big responsibility, so we want to make sure our parents feel supported in that. But we also want to make sure we're supporting our teachers, because they've got a daunting task ahead of them trying to educate on normal terms, and now we've added all of this, so we want to make sure we're making it easy and feasible for our educators to do their job well and feel supported. Our registration night, we have, along with the district in step with everyone else's plans, we've minimized the process. Very thankful to have Skyward online registration. That's going to be a huge tool for us. We will have one-page communication with detailed steps on what parents need to do before they come to us, and then what will be expected when they walk in the door. We did Sign Up Genius, where parents could pick a 15-minute window of their choice to bring their student in. And then we did say that if they come up and they have not signed in, they can call if they don't have access to technology, or we have a holding area for overflow if someone's going to come in and try to do a walkthrough. But we want to make sure that we're being diligent about keeping crowds at a good size for us. So that's pretty much, let's see if I left anything out. One big thing, the large group gatherings with high school, it's a little bit different. We don't know what sports are going to look like. Obviously, we're not going to do large assemblies first 9 weeks, probably. We can utilize outside spaces if we get to a point where we can have a pep rally or a gathering. With chorus and band or theater or speech, those are things that our kids work so hard at, and you want to celebrate them and you want to see their performances. So we're lucky we can either do multiple showings or live stream the event. Those are some options that we've talked about, because we want our kids to have normal to the best of our ability. to keep them involved and engaged in the age-appropriate things they're supposed to be involved in, but we will obviously keep safety at the forefront throughout all of our planning, so.
Thank you. Thank you.
All right, thank you.
Thank you, Ms. Miller. So that is what our school plans look like. Mr. Wiley, I'm sorry. I'll let Mr. Brewer, I jumped in too quickly.
I saw Miss Andrews first. Then we'll-
Yeah, I just have a quick question. I love that we've got all these school plans. I think parents will appreciate them, and they're very detailed. As a parent that will have a child in the elementary, middle, and high school, I appreciate all the plans, and they all make sense to me, and I feel like they are doable. My question is, though, that we're talking about a lot of cleaning, which is great, and I think it needs to happen. My concern is, I know, like, when I've checked the district website as far as, like, what our job openings are and so forth, continuously we are needing custodial staff. How are we addressing that?
So it's really not a restriction on number as much as it is just availability.
Right.
So we kind of similar to what we talk about with bus drivers. I think what we've tried to discuss with Jamie through the custodial world is obviously we continue to recruit and fill those open spots. But we talked about how we can have some shared responsibility, especially since teachers now will have some cleaning supplies that they're accessible to them in their classroom. How maybe we can share some responsibility of cleaning some spaces so there's not as much additional pressure on custodians as you might think if you just sit here and say, well, no one's going to help do that. So I think in our mind that's kind of what we're thinking. But we've thought about that.
Ms. Andrews, Mr. Wise?
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. You know, as I heard Ms. Andrews say that she had children in middle school, I also, and I sometimes forget it, I have a child in middle school as well. And he's been in middle school about 15 years now. I guess he's a slow learner, but I almost forgot what I was going to mention. I heard middle school and Dr. Miller, thank you, I'm proud of you, mentioned that we are eliminating the use of lockers. And I know all of our Sumner County middle and high school students are just as sweet as they can be, and I know none of them would ever dare. But how do we project the look of searching backpacks for weapons?
Mr. Wise, I would say first, I think that most kids don't use lockers anymore. I think honestly, like we have about 1,800 at White House between the two buildings, and we probably had 50 kids that were using them. They've become more of a congregation place than social place, but
Didn't even put them in the new school.
yeah, they're not even in Liberty Creek. And I would say, Mr. Wise, I think what's really fascinating, and I don't want to jump over anybody or anything, but I think from the perspective of the way our kids are and the way our teachers are and the way our SROs are, that group together, they do such a tremendous job of communicating when there's a threat or something like that, that, I mean, honestly, usually before, the first 15, 20 minutes of class have passed, if there's a threat in the school, we usually have multiple kids. I mean, Katie, that was my experience.
Yeah, I can say that from my perspective, probably not using the lockers makes me feel a little better than using a lot of lockers, because back a long time ago when kiddos did use lockers, way back when I was a principal, they actually. Thank you, Judge. They actually did use lockers way back when I was a principal. We probably had more issues about something being in a locker that wasn't assigned to you because you found that child and then they're like, I've never used that locker. I didn't even know it was assigned to me. I forgot it. Because none of them use locks because they didn't want to keep, you know what I mean? It's just one of those things. So I think we've moved past that. Most students, like Scott said, don't use the lockers, and restricting that, I think, will probably help us in that area.
well, are we supposed to be ready for phase two? Okay, so I'm gonna use what we in the instruction department efficiently call Hessen speed. I'm gonna try to channel my inner Jean Hessen, and she's been here a month now, so now we can make fun of her. So we're gonna use Hessen speed tonight to complete this. Lance knows exactly what I'm talking about. No, I wanna catch a few things before we jump into the presentation. First, I wanna take just a moment to introduce Frankie Skinner. Frankie's been with us in the central office for a while, but she's moved into our supervisor of federal programs. Robin Hood retired, and Frankie has moved and just doing a fantastic job already. And yet you haven't had a chance yet to meet her formally in her new position. And then Kyle Craighead, Ms. Bachman, you read his letter last month. And Kyle Craighead has moved in with, he's going to serve as our CARES Act coordinator. You know, with the money that the feds gave us, they also gave us a lot of other things that we have to account for and do. So Kyle has jumped right in, has helped us with that, but also jumps and helps in with many other things as we work forward. So I want to give you a chance to meet them. I want to take a moment, you know, for our principals, our lead educators, our coordinators, our teachers. The work that they have done has been exemplary. You know, there was Dwight Eisenhower once said that plans are useless, planning is essential. I feel so guilty sometimes because our principals, I think you saw tonight, our principals not only are building level leaders, they're strategic planners and they're thinkers. And I can't tell you the amount of time that they put in since March of having to think about the best way to serve their kids and to lead their buildings. And they've worked at it tirelessly. And for weeks on end, we would work on a plan and then new data would come out and everything would change. And I mean, it happened as late as between like last Thursday and Monday. So I've just got to really take my hat off. You know, like, I'll be honest, I'll put our plan up against anybody's in the country. I really think we have an exemplary plan because I think we've got such a great team. And we also have what makes it possible is we have such great leaders at the building level and in the classroom level. So I want to take a moment just to commend them for the tireless work that they've done. And I think you saw that clearly tonight with the 3 plans that were presented to you, that they were just outstanding. So thank y'all for sharing those. I'd like to thank our teachers, a huge thanks. You know, if you look back at the spring when we first started dealing with COVID, any obstacle that was presented, they overcame in creative ways. And we know that as we roll in with the challenges that we face, they'll do the same thing this fall. Ms. Andrews, you asked about employee children, about considering a hybrid plan. Here's what we're thinking is so each child will have 2 days of instruction. What we're thinking is that so like if I'm a teacher at, let's say, Beach High School, and my children go to Hunter and Beach Elementary, our kids would report to those schools on those other 2 days, and they would be with me on the Wednesday when we're doing the virtual stuff. We don't think there's a way to manage childcare any other way, and we feel like our teachers are, you know, critical to our ability to be able to have our kids in school. And so that's kind of our approach is to be able to manage it that way. And I think it just connects in with, you know, beyond just, I think one of the beauties of Sumner County Schools is that when you work for Sumner County Schools, it's not just a job. You're part of a Sumner County family. And I think that's echoed from the very top to, you know, across the board in everything that we do. And I think our commitment, you know, when we first started dealing with COVID back in March, as we sat down with Dr. Phillips and started planning, our 2 chief commitments were our kids' learning, our children's learning, and our commitment to the safety of our children and our staff, and taking care of our children and our staff. I mean, every decision that we've made, I mean, way before March, but intensified from March on, has been about taking care of our kids and our staff and making sure that everybody is safe and that we're learning to the best of our ability. And we think that that falls in line with that plan. I also want to take a moment, our central office team, you know, I've been meaning to put this on social media. Andy and Jennifer with School Nutrition, y'all, our final count was 562,132 meals served during the spring and summer. That's amazing. But you know, like just like everything else, one of the things that we had to address as we started dealing with COVID was, you know, we all work closely together, but sometimes we work in many different areas because people don't appreciate the complexity of running a school system. As a principal, you know, I operated out of like 4 budget lines when I was a principal. When I used to come in, I mean, thankfully, Vinci, Dr. Phillips gave me great advice when I first started. He just said, listen to Vinci. The best thing you can do the first month is listen to Vinci, and she'll guide you. And she did wonderfully. But there's so much complexity. And what's been amazing over the last couple of months is the way that everybody's worked together. I don't want to jump because we got some people that are going to address it in just a minute. But I do want to take a moment. Chris Brown, Katie Brown, Clint, Lisa, Amanda, Naomi, Norma, Keisha, Melanie. Everybody has worked together, whether it's like, Keisha's team making sure that kids that were hard to reach got food, that our homeless kids were taken care of. Melanie, y'all, we contacted all but about 80 of our kids in the spring. The state of Tennessee is trying to figure out how you contact people, how you make sure all your kids are accounted for. Our principals, under Melanie's leadership, they contacted all but about 75 or 80 of our kids, which is really, really just a tremendous undertaking. But across the board, whether it was getting out the most current information for HR, whether it was taking care of the financials that were crazy in the spring, like whether it's taking care of our special needs, our special education kids, everything across the board, and beyond just doing our own individual jobs, we've banded in dozens and dozens of teams. And that has been exemplary. As crazy as this is, and as much as I hate COVID, I have to say that every day coming to work, it just encourages me about the direction that we're moving in as a school district, as a country, because we have such fine people to work with, and we have the best kids, I think, in the state of Tennessee. So let me jump in. I want to share just a little bit of background information, then we'll jump into the slideshow. When we did our most recent POSSIP survey, we heard from 12,566 different families. So that's about 49% of our families. And so the data that we got back on whether they were comfortable returning, 46% said that they were comfortable returning, 22% said they were mostly comfortable returning, and 32% said they were not comfortable returning. All right, when given the choice of what would be your preferred way to return, 54% favored in-person, 100% regular traditional classes. 28% favored a staggered or hybrid schedule, and 18% favored a virtual return. We're going to address that in just a minute, but Ms. Hawkins, you had asked earlier about class size. I think we'll have a significant number of kids that will choose the virtual option for either 9 weeks or 18 weeks, depending on their grade level, and that will also further reduce class sizes in addition to what we talked about earlier, because I do think that will be a very viable option for some of our families, especially those that have medically fragile family members or other situations, and we'll address that in just a minute. When we surveyed our teachers about 2 weeks ago, week and a half ago, what we found is that 53.1% of our teachers were comfortable or very comfortable returning to school, returning to teach. About 46.9% were uncomfortable or very uncomfortable with the return. Okay, so our plan now is we will follow up with those surveys. We'll run another round after the district and school plans go out. We'll do more surveying to kind of see where we are. But that's where we are now. Now, I will say that a significant number of teachers felt more comfortable. Remember, this was done before we started talking before Mayor Holt's decree about masks, and before we started really emphasizing the wearing masks and things like that. So I believe it was 47% of those that said they were uncomfortable or very uncomfortable said that they would be more comfortable with school if they had on a mask or if others had on masks. So that's what we found from surveying our teachers. And again, I think you've seen throughout the district plan, as we've gathered that feedback through the district plan and through our school plans, is we've taken every step that we can conceivably think of to make school safe for our employees and for our kids. So that's the data that we gathered there. Okay, and I mean the reality is that every generation faces challenges and opportunities. And so as we were talking about it, one of the things that hit us, and this is where I'll hit Hessen's speed, I promise, JJ. World War I, you faced the Spanish influenza and World War I. The greatest generation came through the Great Depression and then the battles in Europe and Japan. The baby boomers, you had Vietnam, we had the 1960s, we experienced the civil rights movement, we had the first man that walked on the moon. Challenges and wonderful opportunities that forever changed the way that we lived as a nation. You know, we saw great deprivation, but also things that still to this day move our hearts with joy as we see the outcomes of those movements. The Y2K generation, marked by September 11th and the iPhone. You know, there would be many, we're probably a little unfair to Y2K, but they're still young. They've got plenty of time for us to add other pictures in the future. And we show these pictures because what we want to talk about is that this generation, you know, starting, if you think about the kindergartners that start this year, the pre-K kids that start this year, they're going to be faced with tremendous challenges brought on by this pandemic. Our high school seniors are facing a challenge of not just what their senior year will be like, but what will they inherit and what will their task be as they take on as the next generation of Americans to step forward and take their role in the line of service to the country and county and school. And so, you know, we found this quote, Ms. Wall found this quote yesterday. How wonderful is it that nobody needs to wait a single moment before starting to improve the world? I think the thing that we have to retool our mind on, it's really easy as we face COVID to let COVID shape our reality. And we have to keep in mind and return time and time again that the most important thing we do is we launch another generation of kids each year onto the path of success for the remainder of their lives by giving them the opportunities that are there. And we have to come back to that because otherwise you can just get crushed and you can allow the pandemic, you can allow COVID to define who we are and what we do. We're going to take every step and every precaution to be as safe as possible for our kids and for our staff. And at the same time, we got to do everything in our power to make sure that we help children get the education that they need to fulfill their dreams. It's good to hear a 47, almost a 48-year-old say that. But I've got Mr. Thomas Oglesby is going to come up here tonight. He's waited a long time, and he's going to share with us just a little bit about his dreams and goals. Yes, sir. Go right ahead. You're good.
Hi, my name is Thomas Oglesby. I am 10 years old, going into 5th grade at Guild Elementary. My future career goals are to be a basketball player or an engineer. I want to be an engineer because I like building things and enjoy STEM projects at school. I would like to be a basketball player because I love the sport and they make a lot of money. Even though I do not always like school, I do miss it and understand that it is important for me to reach my future goals.
That was wonderful, Thomas. Thank you so much. So Thomas is one of our 5th graders at Guild Elementary, and we're excited to have him come and speak. You know, we've got to continue to hear our kids and see our kids and remember how important they are for what we're doing. Okay, and again, like these are some of our Sumner County students. They represent our future that we can't lose sight of as we work through how we respond to the pandemic. With great challenge comes the opportunity to craft the next normal, to ask what our students need to be successful in a post-COVID world, and to shift in that direction. Our task is not just to survive a pandemic, but to help our students become the next greatest generation. They're going to have wonderful opportunities in the midst of the great challenges that we experience right now. All right, I'm going to turn it over now to Ms. Christy Wall to talk about teaching and learning.
Good evening. So we've heard about a lot of new. We've heard about student safety and the concern for the health and well-being of our kiddos and our faculty members. And we know that as school reopens, a lot of newness will be a part of our new norms. However, one thing will not be changing drastically, and that's the support elements that we have for teaching and learning. So in talking through that and looking specifically at how we're going to do this and keep all these moving pieces together, I wanted to chart out just a brief kind of overview with some things that we've been working on alongside with our teachers since all the way back in March when we were forced to be entirely virtual and remote. Some things that came to mind to successfully reopen schools and supporting our efforts in teaching and learning was that holding up the fact that our teachers are our most valuable asset to the system. They're our frontline people for our kiddos. We cannot do school without them. Although technology has played an integral role of reaching and connecting and instructing, our teachers still are at the core of everything that goes on in the realm of teaching and learning. Hopefully you've seen that with some of the reentry and reopening plans both at the district level for our care and concern for their well-being and their workload, as well as the support of our learning aspirations for students. We anticipate a need for additional substitute teachers. Just in the event of sickness and the spread of COVID, we know that inevitably our teachers will need some form of backup in some way, shape, or form. So the idea in supporting teachers specifically with substitute teachers is that we have a cadre of frequently utilized substitute teachers that have been great to Sumner County Schools and in and out of our buildings day in and day out when we were doing business as normal. These substitute teachers have been contacted through coordination with HR and the instruction department to be brought in for specialized training to support their learning to in turn support teachers. So in the event that substitute teachers or when substitute teachers are needed, they'll be working through building their knowledge over ways to interact with the curriculum materials that we have in circulation with our students and at different grade levels, learning some of the new aspects of technology and how we've integrated, and then also giving them access to Active Directory so they're a little bit more equipped as they're coming into classrooms and supporting teachers who are perhaps out for an extended reason, due to the nature of COVID. So again, the purpose behind effectively training these substitute teachers is for them to interact and familiarize themselves with curriculum, technology tools, and instructional resources, and those trainings are happening as soon as next week. So they will be trained, this core group of substitute teachers will be trained as early as next week to be prepared for reopening schools in the event of our teachers needing backup support in their classrooms. We also have a video library. We've got roughly 30 teachers across the district that are recording virtual interactive lessons and will be housed in a virtual library for our teachers to utilize in their Google Classrooms. So it's our teachers interfacing in math and in English from grades K through 8 to provide these lessons, a bank of lessons and resources for other teachers to utilize and pull from in the need to provide those to students that are out with extended absences or to place in their Google Classrooms so we can interact in a hybrid scenario and use those as needed. We also have instructional pacing guides that reflect the first quarter of school for all core subject areas that have been created by teacher committees. Those will be shared with our teachers later this week or the beginning of next week, just to indicate how what the momentum and movement of working through instruction while also adapting to some of the social and emotional needs of our students as we plan to re-enter and reopen. We'll release the first quarter of those materials initially, not to overwhelm teachers, but to give them a roadmap on how we start back to typical instruction and our new normal of school. Also, we have added layers of support through our Sumner Connect leads, which I'll leave some of that explanation for Jean to share in terms of support with technology aspects of Google Classroom and G Suite interaction, as well as our lead educators who serve as our instructional coaches and will continue to support teachers in curriculum implementation, instruction, assessment support, and facilitating professional learning. Teacher collaboration is pretty vital. We've got some great examples to look at here in just a moment, but we know that providing teachers a way to connect and learn together and grow together is essential in long-term learning and establishing new good habits. So we've got some virtual collaboration structures that are in place currently that we'll talk about, but that also will continue throughout the school year. So perhaps, for example, all of the Algebra 1 teachers across the district will have an area, virtual space in place to connect, ask each other questions, work through common problems to provide good, solid instructional resources and answers to best support kids while they work together virtually. So in looking at some of these numbers, I've got some analytics to look at together. So some of the professional learning that's typically offered to teachers over the summer is typically done face-to-face. Well, this is our prime time for professional learning. However, with social distancing and teachers not being able to get together face-to-face, we made the determination to provide all professional learning or trainings to teachers virtually. So with that being said, one of our core examples with our ELA curriculum adoption, we still had to get teachers familiar with the new material that they're about to teach in middle school and continue on in elementary. So a little experiment that we tried out was putting these teachers in a Google Classroom as students. I told our mothership team over the summer before we launched these, I said, this is gonna be a science experiment. We're gonna see how this goes. I want teachers to experience learning in a virtual setting just as our students did over March, April, and May. That'll give us good perspective while our adults are in the learner seats. The other facet of that is being able to collaborate and connect virtually and see what it takes for adults to engage in a virtual setting. So with that being said, over the course of the summer, our English teachers were able to participate in an 8-week training, 1 hour a week, that they designated and had some flexible assignments and work that they did online. In doing that, we've had 500 teachers participate K-12 with the Wit and Wisdom curriculum professional development, and they've logged over 4,000 hours of professional learning, and that's just specific to curriculum implementation with ELA. That's one pocket of teachers that teach English. Isn't that amazing? So school has not ended for our teachers. Even though we had a really epic end to the school year, school is still in session for our adults. So I'm super proud of the progress that we've seen and also the feedback. We've got some of our lead teachers and our lead educators and our coordinators working to do the assignments, provide feedback to the teachers, engage with them on a week-to-week basis. And so every week there's been dialogue and exchange with over 500 teachers across the district about Wit and Wisdom to get them ready for implementation and use in all grades. In looking at some other statistics, Sumner Connect has been launched and is accessible. This is our training site that has videos provided to both parents and teachers about becoming more familiar with some of our technology aspects to connect and provide some different ways to interact in a hybrid learning scenario. Since the development of that site, we've had 8,000 visitors hit that site. So Dr. Yan from the realm of professional development was able to pull these numbers for us. So district-wide, we're looking at 1,100 training events that teachers have signed up for over the course of this summer. And so that dates back as of May the 23rd. 1,100 trainings that our teachers have been involved in. So some pretty remarkable analytics to say that school's been out and that everyone's been vacationing over the summer, because I would argue the absolute contrary. Our teachers have been working hard. We've been able to provide professional learning in a whole new setting, and we've actually had some really great response and efficiencies picked up in being able to do professional learning in a virtual setting. And so we look to continue that support as we get back into the school year and establish a new norm to provide that continuous support and improvement. So I'm going to turn it over. Speaking of professional learning, Supervisor of Professional Learning, Dr. Gahn, is going to talk to you about some of the collaborative work that's been going on since the beginning of spring and over the course of this summer.
Thank you, Ms. Wall. I've heard throughout the evening, we've heard about the teams that have been assembled throughout this process. So to give you a little bit further dive into that, I want to share with you the opportunity here to see the collaborative work that have happened in more details, not just, we've heard from our principals that talked about that, and we've heard from Dr. Phillips and Mr. Langford, but here's some specific collaborative work so you can see all of the pieces coming together to produce the work that has been presented to you tonight. General Stanley McChrystal, he was the commander of the Joint Special Operations Task Force in the Iraq War. And when they faced the Al-Qaeda in Iraq, they found that there was a network of enemy that they had never faced before. So they completely uprooted the general thought process of how the military strategic planning should take place. And in his book, Team of Teams, he addressed that. And one of the central themes of his book is to knock down silos. And recently I had a chance to read that book, and I was blown away by the framework that Dr. Phillips and Mr. Langford has laid out in our Team of Teams, where we completely knocked down the silos in that in his book, he talked about the military branches coming together and the intelligence operations coming together. And here, as you heard Mr. Langford talk about the across central office, bringing in principals, bringing in teachers, bringing in all of the stakeholders involved in that. So as we look at these numbers moving into this, here are some specific numbers that we looked at. As we moved into this team of team approach, when we started the re-entry conversations, as the end of last year was winding down and the thought process was moving forward for us to lay out the plan for the re-entry, 11 total committees over this process went into work. And that consisted of over 140 individuals that were a part of these 11 teams that helped lay out the plan and the framework that you guys have been seen tonight as it was laid out. That included district leaders. We've heard our principals talk about the collaborative effort and the input that they had. So we had the school leaders involved, instructional coaches were brought in from lead educators, and we had teachers involved as well. A few examples that of some of the committees that were included. We have the culture committee, led by Katie Brown and her team, but have brought in components across the district, knocking down those silos to bring in that work across the instruction department, the pupil service department, the school level departments, and her department in safe schools and healthy students. The operations committee brought in technology. How are we going to roll out this plan? How is that going to look at the technology level? What are those going to look like? Are we going to have the Chromebooks in place? Are we going to have the technology in place to move into those different elements, as well as the instruction side and school level and teachers on that committee to discuss that in weekly conversations throughout this process as we develop the plan. The instruction planning committee, when we had the intricate details of what Ms. Wall just laid out and putting in that Google Classroom, how are those teachers going to train the teachers to then be able to move forward and to experience that, what our students are going to experience when they go back to school in the fall in that Google Classroom setting, as well as the other elements outside of ELA. And then we had the leadership committee of the different trainings and concerns that our school and district leaders were going to have. What were we going to be able to work through and be supportive on those elements? So those are just a few examples of how those silos came crashing down in this situation, and how the team of teams and collaborative work was put forth. So I think when you see those numbers and you hear about the input and the testimonies that we heard from our principals earlier, to look on here and see 11 different committees and 140 different Sumner County teachers, leaders, school district level, building level, and coaches from our instructional teams all come together for those to bring this plan together and make it possible. We heard from our schools earlier today. As you heard earlier, there was lots of planning that went into this, and it was just a collaborative approach. And you'll see that you were given 3 examples of the different school plans, but all of our schools have a specific plan. And because of that collaborative effort, when it was laid out for the principals to come up with their own plan, Dr. Phillips mentioned earlier all three principals mentioned, and Mr. Langford mentioned earlier today, that when they roll out those district plans, or excuse me, those school plans, when you see those individual ones, it was that conversation, it was that collaborative effort, it was that meeting with those 140 plus teams coming across, and then every other week, the entire group met. So each one of the teams knew what was happening within the other one. So we didn't create silos by knocking down silos. We made sure that all of the teams were aware of what was going on across the board in those particular meetings. One quick example recently that happened, we had a situation that came up, and Mr. Langford had to go to a meeting with Dr. Phillips, and the instruction team was making a small tweak, and before Mr. Langford returned, we were able to give him the list of 10 different principals who were going to be coming in to give us feedback on a particular element that happened, that was going to be tweaked on one element of the team. And those principals, in less than 24 hours, were able to join in on that meeting because of the buy-in that was set forth across this process. So I know we've heard all night that this has been a team-of-team approach, but I hope this gives you a better insight of what that team looked like across this process. And I know it's kind of hard to see, and we couldn't fit it all on the board, but here is our team of teams, and not all 140 people could be seen on there, but you can see at the top in the yellow, the members of the leadership team. On the left-hand side there in the green, the culture team. In the blue, which was broken down into several parts because of the instructional elements that were laid out throughout the night, those were broken down into the different subparts. And then in the yellow, I believe over there on the right-hand side, you had the operations team. And then once again, not only were those teams meeting weekly and interacting, every other week the team of teams would meet together to update on all of the components that were happening in that. So it gives you a real visual here of the 140 plus people, of why you have such a detailed, thorough, and collaborative plan across the districts from all the stakeholders involved here. So thank you, Dr. Phillips, for your vision on that, and Mr. Langford for driving this real collaborative and team effort. So when people, as Mr. Flood said, that their input was sought, I mean, here's a true visual of what you can see of the different people involved across that the whole process here. And before we go to Ms. Hessen here, just wanted to show you a quick video of how the team of teams approach really brought us all together as a district, and saw if there is something out of the COVID that we can look at and say, okay, here's something that we can look at building on. Here's an example from one of our upcoming seventh graders, I believe, Miss Isabel Hibbard. I think technology is going to play this for us.
Hi, my name is Isabella Hibbard, and I'm a 7th grader going into Rutgers Stewart Middle School. And today I'm talking about how school can help you in achieving your dream and dream job. So my dream job is to run my own foundation and to help a world problem that has been going on. It's the ones that is the least help, because I feel like the ones that are least helped need the most help because they're not getting help from anybody else. So that is something that I want to do. I don't particularly know what it is yet, because when I get older they might be least problem now, might be completely different from the future when I end up getting a job to run my own foundation. So I don't know exactly yet, but all I know is that I want to help a world problem that is least helped, so I can build that up to the most helped. And I know school is going to help that, because the school gives me a good education to know what I'm talking about, such as, let's say I want to help global warming when I'm older. Science class talks a lot about that. And even other classes talk about history, like social studies talks about what happened in the past, and sometimes even in the future. So it's very important to stay in school and to learn all about that so you can know what you want to be when you're older. And the teachers are absolutely incredible because they inspire you to work hard and to not give up on your big dream and on your dream job. So overall, school is in a very important role of making your dream go big and to make sure you get that dream done if you want to, which I'm sure everybody wants to achieve a dream that's going to maybe help big or maybe just help a little bit at a time. Whatever it is, school has a big impact in what you want to do when you're older. Hi, my name's...
All right, we are now going to move over into the Sumner Connect portion of our presentation, and I'm going to turn it over to Ms. Jean Hessen, our Sumner Connect coordinator.
Thanks, sir. Oh, Bella. I love that girl. All right. All right, as Isabella said, goals and continued learning are important for the overall success of students and teachers alike. And Sumner Connect and the teams mentioned tonight have worked to support that continual learning for teachers, families, and soon our students. When I spoke with you in June, we emphasized and highlighted that technology was a tool, not a teacher. We emphasized that multiple times throughout our presentation in June. And since June, Sumner Connect and the instructional department has been working to support teachers as they increase their capacity and their own skills regarding instructional technology tools like Google and Google G Suite tools. Teachers have jumped in. They have jumped right in and jumped on board and worked hard to increase their own skills and their own ability within these instructional technology tools. As Ms. Wall said, the Sumner Connect site has had over 8,000 hits in 28 days. In 28 days, we've had over 8,000 hits to our site, and those include videos and tutorials for our teachers and soon our parents and our kiddos as well. So this particular site shows you how Sumner Connect going forward will support families and teachers and our students. Right now, Sumner Connect has tutorials for parents as they navigate Google Classroom and Skyward. Those are both in English and in Spanish. They will provide additional tutorials to support the navigation of Google tools, and Sumner Connect will also work with technology to load our parents into our Google Classrooms, and I'll show you in a minute how that works, but parents will be able to receive an opt-in to receive a weekly update on their child's progress through the assignments in Google Classroom. So you'll see this is what's coming up, this is what's due, this is what's turned in, and even this is what's still out or missing. So that will be a communication piece sent to parents from Google Classroom that will require no work on the teacher's part other than the original assignment of those tasks. For teachers, we will work to create and provide tutorials regarding the Google tools and Skyward. If you look over on the far left, it says, the third bullet says training offered through district-created tutorials on the Sumner Connect site. Right now, there are currently 11 authentically made here within the district tutorials on different Google tools that teachers can access. And we've heard really great feedback about those. It's helpful when you're receiving training, especially on something like technology, to be able to reference that later. And those videos are there. You watch them once. Okay, yeah, I got that. And then you start to apply it and you're like, hold on, wait. What exactly was I supposed to do again? And those videos are still there. Hence, maybe the 8,000 hits. They've gone back and applied some of that learning, and they've been able to kind of bounce back and forth between applying and learning and applying and learning. And that's a really helpful thing for teachers. And I think if you've been in a setting where you're learning something online, you've seen how that pivot can be helpful to reference those resources and have them there for you. So those, there are currently 11. There are more coming. We will also we will support teachers as they provide instructional materials for the students during possible prolonged absences through the Google Classroom platform. So Ms. Hawkins, like you said, well, if we're out for 7 days because we have a confirmed case, we're out for 3 days and then we're out again, Sumner Connect and the materials that are provided on that site will be accessible by teachers to include a virtual library of lessons. This is a huge project that I'm really excited about, and the instructional team and Sumner Connect and
pairing with technology, it has launched this. It's happening. We have videos being submitted now by, like Ms. Wall said, 28 teachers from our district who have jumped on board. Teachers who are in their summer. They're in their summer, they're jumping on board, they're recording these lessons, 2 grades or 4 grades on curriculum they've never taught. And they're loading these lessons for us. They're great, high quality teachers that we have here in Sumner County. And those lessons will be banked in a way that makes sense, that we can access for years, and organized where teachers and parents can access those files through their Google Classroom in a way that is protected and safe, but easily accessed as well. That will be a huge tool for educators in the event of, I'm sick as a teacher, but I can still provide really quality lessons through these virtual lessons. Or I've taught all day, but I have 3 kids who aren't going to be able to attend school, or who are out. I can still provide real teaching to them through Google Classroom, through this bank of lessons, and not miss a beat. Right? That's a gap that we've had on snow days, that we've had throughout the entire, in my 15-year history here. And this project, I think, will be a great way to keep that learning always continual and going forward. So I'm really excited about that. And that will be likely stored on a different platform than the Sumner Connect site, but it will definitely be linked there as well. There will be 63 Sumner Connect leads. Every building, K-12, will have at least one Sumner Connect lead. The buildings who have 2 APs will have 2 Sumner Connect leads, and those Sumner Connect leads will help in troubleshooting, in providing additional job-embedded training, and in practical applications of these Google tools. So it's one thing to learn how to use them. Yeah, I know how to use this. Now, how do I apply this to my kindergartners? How do I apply this tool to my 3rd grade class? This makes sense for 9th graders, but is it going to work for 2nd? And we have 63 Sumner Connect leads who will be working as teams to provide videos, spotlight videos on practical applications of those tools within the classroom. So not only are you going to learn how to use them, then you're going to learn how to apply them. And if you forget, you can watch it again, right? So it's going to be there for you to reference back again. So I'm excited about that as well. I think that's something that's going to be beneficial to our teachers and to our parents as well. The Sumner Connect site is here. This is not password protected. So as a parent, if you would like to go and watch the G Suite videos that are there, just hit the teachers page and hit the G Suite training, and you can watch those as well. They're also going to be linked under the parent page, but those are there for the public, for you guys to watch as well. Okay, so Google Classroom. As Dr. Phillips has discussed earlier, I want to take a couple minutes to show you what that looks like, because that is a very vague thing. What does that look like in application? I wasn't able to link a live classroom to this particular slide deck, but I did take some screenshots to show you what's offered in the navigation of that platform. So these are just 3 very probably difficult to see slides. On the next couple ones are larger, but I want to show you an overview. Slide 1. There we go. This is my classroom from last year. This is my actual Google Classroom from last year. When you log in, you'll go to google.com using your Chrome browser, and in the upper right-hand corner, there's a little grid waffle. You'll hit Google Classroom there. Your students will know how to log in, and if you're unsure, there's actually a tutorial on how to log in on Sumner Connect there for you as well. So this is what your home page for your classroom would look like for your child. Now, as a parent, you're not going to have access to this because you will through your child's login, but we're not going to provide you as a parent a login for your child's classroom. Your child can show you what's happening within their classroom, and you also have access as a guardian to receive those emails of what's happening and not happening as far as what your child is finishing within those classrooms. But this is what it looks like. So the first page here is the stream, and it's like a feed. It's like a Facebook feed, but it's only within those, within the students of that class. So if the teacher posts something like an announcement, there's a quiz in your classwork, it's due Friday. It will show up there in their stream as kind of a running record of announcements, okay? Beyond that is classwork. That's where teachers will put their work, put the assignments in their multimedia files, maybe link a YouTube video to accompany the Wit and Wisdom training or the Wit and Wisdom video, along with something provided by Wit and Wisdom in Sync. Okay, so it could house those there. People is your roster, and then Gradebook is grades is auto-populated by your assignments. So once you make the assignment and students start to turn it in, that gradebook is automatically created and kept up with for the teacher. Grades will still be kept through Skyward and recorded through Skyward. This is just as kind of a safety measure, for lack of a better word there, a way to help teachers organize those quickly for that accountability piece. All right, so here's an example of a demo assignment. In the trainings that we've done, we've used this particular class, and this is a math collaboration using Google Slides. You can see I've assigned it to 5 students. 0 of those students have yet to turn that assignment in. And there's a Google Doc and 2 Google Slides as examples. And then where it says no due date, that's where I put my overall explanation of what to do there. Okay, so when students log in, when students hit this classwork tab at the top, there will be a list of assignments there, and this is an example of one of those assignments. When they click View Assignment down in the yellow, they will have the option to complete it and turn it in. There are far more detailed instructions, live instructions, someone walking you through this on the Sumner Connect site. But for the sake of time, I just wanted to give you an overview of what's offered on the platform so that when someone says Google Classroom, oh yeah, okay, I've seen that, I know what that is. And then here's an example of the demo class gradebook. You can see who has and has not, those are teachers, so no harm done there. They know that they haven't done their work. Those are some of my friends, and so that's not a privacy issue. But you can see who has and has not turned in their work. And then that missing assignment would be communicated to parents through their guardian email every week. So I know that in their American history class, they have 4 missing assignments. Where have you been, right? So you can get that, we can opt in and get that constant feedback, okay? I think from here, so Sumner Connect will work to support teachers in that brick and mortar classroom and the virtual realm. But for those students who choose that full virtual option, Kyle Craighead is going to go over the ins and outs of the Sumner Virtual Academy. So thank you guys for your time tonight.
Oh, I'm sorry. Who was first?
Oh, questions?
Ms. Andrews?
Yes, ma'am.
So my question, it may be for Mr. Craighead, so if he's gonna address it, just say that and I'll be fine with it. But, so if we have to go on to where we're doing Google Classroom and so forth, obviously this is a little bit simpler for your like K2, 3, 4, depending upon if your school departmentalizes or not.
Yes.
If your school departmentalizes, you have a middle schooler or a high schooler. Do you have, and each of those teachers obviously are going to have their own Google Classroom.
Yes, that's a good question.
When they go and when your student goes and pulls up their Google Classroom, do all of those individual teachers show up that way?
Yes.
And then as a parent, is there one overall place to opt in, or do I have to opt into every class?
No. So two answers. When your student hits their Google Classroom icon, all of the classes in which they are currently enrolled, they've both through Skyward, but mainly because of their access code, right? They've logged in, will be shown there. So it'll be like block 1, block 2, block 3, block 4. Okay. But the guardian email goes off also all of those classes in which they're enrolled. So you won't receive 4 guardian emails. You will receive 1 overarching guardian email that will include all of their assigned classes.
And then what about, because specifically teenagers are so app driven, I know there's a Google Classroom app
There
and
is.
so forth.
Yes.
Can they access all of that within their app
Yes.
on their phone and
Yep.
their devices as well?
Yep.
Okay.
Yep, absolutely. Oh, and this one, this links very well with the Wit and Wisdom in Sync and the Bridges curriculum that is K-5. So Bridges will be able to, they've actually pared down their lessons to be more conducive for an online format and provided manipulatives and online support tools to be able to translate quickly into a digital platform. Wit and Wisdom in Sync is something we purchased as a district as well, and that is a simple share from what we understand. We're being provided that soon to the Google Classroom as well. So it all kind of talks. Google is a really awesome platform that just speaks to a lot of things in education, and it makes it fairly easy for teachers as well. Thank you.
And this question may also be for someone else, perhaps Mr. Langford. Are there any tools, online tools, that are being prepared for special education students?
We don't have any particular online tools at this point. We have been purchasing online curriculum and things that are specific for that hard to reach population. The majority of our students that we serve are going to be able to access everything that you're seeing. But we will have a small group of students that won't, and we are actually a whole group of some purchases next week that will help us do that.
I do think one thing to highlight though is, you know, we have so much co-teaching that goes on between special education teachers and regular ed. So one of the things that they've set up is so the special education teachers will have access as a teacher to everything that Jean just showed. And so that way they can collaborate. We felt like it's a great time. Like one of the ways where I think we're going to get better is we're going to get a lot more collaboration between that special education teacher and regular ed teacher. It's going to kind of really help clarify that role and that cooperative endeavor there. So we're really excited about that.
So just real quick, Ms. Andrews, going back to your question about Google Classroom, I've been using it really heavy for 2 years, and I've only used the app on an iPad. So I haven't even gone to it on a normal computer. I can do everything through the iPad, which has been amazing because that's what I would prefer to do. And the other thing is that it immediately, if you want it to, it can upload quizzes and test due dates to my Google Calendar on my phone. So I now, it syncs, like if we had a basketball game that night, I also could see that something was due that night. And so all of my calendar is together. So that's a huge advantage for kids to be able to see that. Huge learning opportunity for high school students who are about to go to college. You better learn how to do those things. Well, this is a great experience for you. So the thing we're about to go over here, we're really excited about it because it was in response to the POSIP survey that Mr. Langford referred to, where we had so many parents say that they were interested in a virtual option. So what we've done is we've put this together, and we now have an alternative pathway of learning for our students across the district, and it is K-12. You can see the people who are up there right now are all instructional coordinators. So we have Susan Bretling, who's going to be elementary school lead. Middle school lead is Melinda Norman. She's a secondary coordinator. And high school lead is Justin Alexander, and he's currently a secondary coordinator as well. The good thing about this is that several districts that we've looked at who have rolled out a virtual plan, they don't have assigned teachers necessarily. They have this online thing that maybe they get check-ins every now and then. That's not our plan. We've actually hired teachers that kids will be assigned to that they will be receiving instruction from. Now, it doesn't necessarily mean 8 to 3, I'm listening to a teacher all day. We know that's not going to be good. No one wants that. It will be some what we call synchronous instruction where you are with a teacher, and some asynchronous instruction where you've learned some things and now you go practice it, a lot like normal school. Because in a 90-minute block of math, the teacher's not teaching the whole time. There's some teaching, there's some practice, then we go back over some of those questions. That's what this would look like. But one thing that we want to nail down is this virtual academy does not look like last 9 weeks. So this is a 5-day-a-week, 8 to 3 time period learning opportunity for students. And we'll go through some of how they get in it here in just a minute. But one of the really big things that we wanted to hammer home is this is what parents said they wanted an option for, so they have it. And so we'll go through some of the parts of it, and then you can ask some questions. So for an overview, every student that chooses this is still a Sumner County student, and that's key, especially when you get into some weird situations like some of our special schools. All learning will be virtually. It will be from home, so they will not come to school anytime during the week for learning. So it will be 8 to 3 at home. Another part of it is that K-8 students will have to do it for 9 weeks. So in this scenario, they're going to have tomorrow through the following Wednesday, the 22nd, they have 7 days to choose, I want to sign up for this. If they do, K-8 students are in it for 9 weeks. There's lots of reasons for that we could go really, into great detail on why you need them for 9 weeks. But you could imagine kids coming and going at different paces. It would be nearly impossible. And especially when you think that we may be having students who go out using Ms. Hesson's Sumner Connect because they test positive or someone their family tests positive. We have kind of like that intermediate catch for those students. And now this is a longer term catch. But one thing that stands out to me, one time Mr. Wise was at school and he told me, we don't want any kids to fall through the cracks. What are we doing to keep every kid from falling through the cracks? And that's what we think we created. Because we've got kids going to school, maybe you were sick and you need some help virtually, or we've got virtual. And so we're really trying to make sure everybody's getting what they need across the board. Back up here to the 9-12 students though, if they opt in, they're in for 18 weeks. There's lots of reasons for this as well, but these are credited classes. It counts towards graduation, it counts towards your GPA, so it's pretty obvious why we would need them for those 18 weeks. That if you're in, and then you can come back in January back to your school. The last bullet point on the left there says that participating in extracurricular activities at the student's school, that's their zone, while enrolled will be allowed and will follow the TDOSAA guidelines. Dr. Phillips touched on this earlier, that they are still our kids, so they're going to be able to participate. Something that's not up here that we have discussed quite extensively is if they need something for research, they would have access to the school library as well. Now that needs to be set up. You can't just come whenever, but the school librarian would let them loan things because they're our kids. And as long as they're our kids, we need to get them what they need. On the right, it says for essential, students enrolled in the virtual academy will provide their own web camera equipped services and internet. This is on an acknowledgement form. And that's the best word we can use. We've all done it before. You've signed something online, you get something on your phone that says I acknowledge the new practices. That's kind of what they're going to get when they sign up on Skyward. So let me explain kind of the registration process for this. And this is where you could have questions, so I'll pause if we do. But as a student tomorrow, any returning student could go on and start registering on Skyward. New students could as well, but we really want our returning students getting on that tomorrow. When you get to the end of that, you're going to have an option to choose, are you interested in the virtual learning option? If they choose that, then it's going to pop up with a screen that has a whole bunch of kind of, yes, I agree to these things type acknowledgments. One of those things is that they have their own web camera with computer and internet provided. Other things is they realize that this is an 8 to 3 schedule, that this does count in my GPA. Those are the types of things that are on there so that everyone knows. If they choose the yes option and then they reach that acknowledgement and they still are going forward, then it populates to us so we see how many kids are choosing this. That's what we need to know quickly, is how many kids are actually going to choose this, and we need firm numbers, not, well, I chose it, but in 3 days, yeah, I don't think I want to do that. We want it to be either you're doing it or you're not, so that we can start really trying to get the numbers correct. So that's key for us at this point. Along those lines, the last 2 points we could probably hit together. Attendance is required and reported assignments and grades are given. I've already touched on the grades. You know that there's going to be a GPA. The attendance is going to be taken every day. Some days, or every day, will be through what's called a Remind app, which really means the teacher sends a text and then the student responds. But then also factored in there is they're going to have an assignment to turn in every day as well. So it doesn't mean it's necessarily something huge, but there's going to be something. We have schedules that are made, and this website that you see that says virtual.sunmerschools.org, it should be live at this point. It was supposed to go live tonight. There are sample schedules of what these student schedules will look like. So you can go on there and look. In elementary, it looks like an elementary schedule. Middle looks like middle. High school looks like high, just as you would expect it to be. And throughout the day, we're hoping that those kids are getting the instruction that they need because now they're connected with a teacher, not just some online program and letting them sync. So they have a point of contact. They also are tied to their school. So if a student from HHS decides to go on the virtual route, they still are showing as an HHS student. They're just learning virtually. So if they come back after 18 weeks, they're still one of our kids. They still have their second semester schedule. Their second semester schedule didn't change. It's not like just craziness and we didn't lose them in the middle of that. Are there any questions about this? Because we figured there might be.
I think Kyle mentioned this, but a couple of times, one of the things that we talked about way back, when we first started discussing creating some options, we really looked at how to capture lessons similar to what Gene mentioned with Sumner Connect, because we knew we would have gaps possibly in the future where students were out, and we talked about how we could use those for students that are out on medical leave and other things. Roll forward, we realized that we're probably going to need to have a more scalable option for K-8 specifically. So we went ahead and did the job posting. We interviewed and hired teachers to be Sumner County teachers. And I think that's a real important thing for our parents to know. We're not signing you up for a program that we've paid for someone to possibly grade your papers, or you might be able to contact them by email or phone. But we're going to have our own actual Sumner County teachers here that are teaching students that are in the virtual school, and then teachers that are Sumner County teachers assigned to grade and to communicate with that student just like their student, whether they're at HHS or GHS or wherever. So I think that's a real positive for us. There was a lot of moving parts to make that happen, and they're not finished. We put the week on the registration because I'm sure that, as we've discussed, on the 23rd, we'll be busy going almost hand by hand through all the students at each school that picked that virtual option, because we'll have to group resources around how many selected that option by grade across clusters of nearby schools. Does that make sense? So we'll have to organize some resources to make that happen. So that's why it's important for parents, if they want to choose that option, to let us know, to sign up between the 15th and the 22nd, which registration starts tomorrow.
I don't know who's first, so I'll start in the middle. Mr. Wise.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. Mr. Craighead, I wanted to take this opportunity tonight because I didn't get to when you left White House High School and came down to the central office. But I just want to thank you for the lives that you have positively influenced. You and I know one of them in particular.
Very well, yeah.
And yes, and I want to thank you for that. And now you have another avenue to positively influence more young lives. And I appreciate what you do.
Thank you.
Mr. Wise, Mr. Wilkerson.
And this may not be the right time in this presentation to ask this, but say I'm a honor student, but I play sports, and I take my 3 classes and I participate in sports, but I need that extra credit to keep me running for valedictorian. Have we looked at how I can take that on my own time to be able to take that 4th class to count towards my honors?
Are you talking about on the virtual platform or just in general?
In general. I don't know if it would go here or Sumner Connect or...
It wouldn't be really, so we're kind of talking about 2 different things.
Okay.
We're talking about having access for credit courses that really don't have to do with the virtual school, but they are taught virtually because they're not offered either at your building or you have a full schedule and so you want to take an additional course.
So
I think that's what you're saying.
completely different.
That's completely
than this.
different.
Okay.
It's completely different, but it is there.
Yes.
Okay.
To happen. One thing that's kind of in between those, and we talked about this back in May, I think, too. You know, we're going to create Zoom classrooms and capture content in some AP classes this year across our high schools, and we talked about this because in the future, another thing that we want to do through Sumner Connect or specifically in this virtual world is to say we have 100 and something lessons completed of an AP course, and then students, we can scale that across the system where students want to take an AP course that's not taught at their school. And
So like if I'm at Westmoreland and I want to take Latin or French.
That's right.
I can go online and do that.
That's right. And that's what we're doing, is we're trying to make sure, not only with what Gene was talking about, but how we're gonna handle some of the high schools this year with Zoom, and paying teachers to do that. All we're trying to do there is capture content, so we'll always have that content edited, and we can push that out to students in future years that don't have access to that class.
Ms. Andrews?
So, 2 questions. One, just because I feel like it's probably going to come up, where we are allowing students to participate in extracurricular activities at their zone schools. Employees who work at the district obviously may not have their kids at a zoned school, but they may want a virtual option for their student. Is it zone school or
No.
the school in which you're enrolled?
No, it's the school that you're eligible. So this really, the eligibility follow, as long as you don't change.
I mean, I understand this. I just
Yeah.
think that there's probably some people that are
So the
watching that may
world of
question.
eligibility is really determinant on where you started your 9th grade year. So your clock starts where you enroll in your 9th grade year, regardless of your address. That is your zoned homeschool. So that's why movement between 8th and 9th grade can get tricky sometimes in the athletic world. So it really doesn't matter in a sense in regard to the virtual option. What matters is that we continue to have them coded to the school that they were eligible at the previous year.
Right. Okay.
So we
I just
wouldn't.
know that question's probably going to get asked.
Yeah, it won't affect eligibility unless there's some weird circumstance where that student has moved and their home school would have changed, but we can't get into that. But that's more case by case. But we've already thought through how to continue to make sure that they're enrolled as a GHS or HHS or Beach student, so their eligibility remains the same.
Right. And then my other question is that for those students, say that go to Union, if they go on the virtual path, then are they also then assuming the school schedule of general Sumner County versus what the Union schedule is?
Yes, they would take what the virtual schedule of Sumner County is at that point. Yeah.
I was just wondering, are there advanced placement classes offered at the Virtual Academy?
No, ma'am.
No AP classes?
Let me jump in on that, Ms. Hawkins. We had to get started to get everything rolling. AP classes are typically done in the spring because to coincide with the test, and so our hope is to be able, like as Mr. Wilkerson just mentioned, how we're trying to leverage video to offer AP courses across the county, as we talked about last month. We're hoping that we can blend what we have with Edgenuity and with what we're going to do as a pilot next year with a couple of AP classes that we're going to offer on video. We're hopeful that we'll be able to get some. We felt like we'd have a little bit of time to build out the AP component to add second semester because we really want those to connect in with the AP test instead of offering those first semester. And AP is a little bit more challenging infrastructure-wise. We'd like to really get our infrastructure sound with the basic classes and then add those AP classes in. I will say that through Edgenuity, Mr. Moore, that's in charge of CTE and STEM, just got access for Edgenuity to add a whole bunch of our CTE classes on Edgenuity. So we will be able to add those in into the virtual environment, or through different aspects there too. So that we're going to start with the basics and then expand curriculum as quickly as we can to get more offerings to match our kids' schedules.
And along those lines, Justin Alexander is putting together right now actually a schedule that's preferred for each grade at high school based on what you've had before. So if you're a freshman, then these are the preferred classes for you to take. If you're a sophomore and you need Spanish, or what if you've already had Spanish? So that way we're looking at each kid individually and trying to get them where they need to be so that when they go back to school in person, that there's not some weird hiccup in their schedule and they're a senior taking a class with a freshman.
Mr. Daniels?
Yeah, just a quick question. One of the essentials you've got listed here is that the student has to have their own web camera equipped device and internet. Obviously, there's parts of our county where families aren't as economically sound as other families. days, but they may have a desire to do the virtual classroom. Are we going to have a plan in place to support those with devices like we did in the spring, or are we going to tell them that no, you have to be in the physical classroom?
So we have made great strides in the number of devices that we have in the district over the last 6 or 7 years. But we are not across the district able to give one-to-one for everyone. We do have, I think now, after we get this latest order, probably 12,000, 13,000 devices that we can get out. So we're in a lot better shape than we've ever been. I think we'll have to handle that case by case. We have said that we want people that sign up for the virtual to understand that the requirement of it is going to be so intense, obviously, from the computer and connectivity side, that we really think if they don't have that, even us providing a device would not get them connectivity. Does that make sense? So, you know, it's kind of one of those things until as a county, as a region, as a country, we can provide internet connectivity in a reliable fashion to everyone. There's going to be some discrepancy that even if you give out a device, it may not have reliable connectivity. We have looked, because there's some things within some of the funding, it will allow you, instead of buying devices, to buy hotspots and other things. And so I know Chris went, but Chris, we've talked about how we could do that and possibly loan out those hotspot devices. But you don't have necessarily 100% coverage when you do that either. So we'll try to tackle it the best we can, but the way that I think most people are trying to look at this, it's not a device issue as much as it is a connectivity issue.
Yeah, so, okay, so the answer is that there may be an option for them, but you'll have to look at it. It's not just the device. It may be where they live. It may be,
that's right,
you know, internet access or whatever it is.
And I think that goes back to some of the other conversations that we've had. We don't want to not offer the opportunity because everyone might not be able to take advantage of it. So you don't want to not do it because we think it's a really good, solid option that a lot of people may be interested in. But we also know that we can't necessarily address every large issue, like connectivity for everybody.
Thank you. And one just kind of follow-up from Ms. Hawkins' questions. I know we mentioned there wouldn't be AP classes. Will there be honors level classes, or will they be more the standard?
Yeah, I'm actually checking on that right now, Mr. Daniels. We felt like the most important thing we could do with our time constraints was to get everything built out to serve the maximum number of students, and then to go back and add whatever we can. Like, you know, we just got approved, I think on Monday, we finished the PO to get the CTE classes added, so they're in the process of being added. I'm checking. I hope to know by the end of the meeting about honors classes.
But we will have some of the CTE classes available.
Yes, sir.
Okay, perfect. Thank you.
Anything else? Okay.
Thank you very much. All right, good evening. We're on the home stretch, I promise. So, you know, my part is going to go by pretty quickly because a lot of it's already been kind of addressed in the district plan in regards to the hybrid option that we have. And like Dr. Phillips said, when we rolled out this schedule, the weekly schedule this morning, we brought in some principals this morning, and they felt strongly about reworking it a little bit into the model that we have right now. And so we have this in a way that it's an alternate schedule with kids coming one day and then off a day and then coming back. We feel like that's going to be the best for kids, and you know, like I said, Dr. Phillips addressed this in regards to the idea of students not having access to a building or a teacher physically for 5 days. If you go 2 days and then you're off for 5 days and coming back around, it's very difficult to manage that learning in regards to meeting the needs of students. And so in this model, they'll be able to teach a lesson and then give them things that they will be able to do at home. And then when they come back into the building, then they can review that stuff that they did at home, practice that, correct any misconceptions that might be there, and then move forward again. And so we really felt like that was going to be the best option for us. And then it also obviously cuts the population down in half in regard to the number of students that we have in the building and classrooms. And then it still allows that midweek cleaning for us to be able to come in on Wednesdays and to be able to provide a deeper cleaning when they're there. And so we think it's a strong model to be able to roll out and meet the needs of kids and learning, and still be able to cut the population down in half to keep the social distancing options available for us. So we've tried to anticipate some questions that might come up in regards to this hybrid option that we have. And one thing is that our teachers expected to teach virtually and in person on the same day or at the same time. And so I think one misconception that we're having to clear up as we're going is that teachers feel like that they're going to have to teach their students in front of them and also have a video camera going on the side for the students at home to be able to watch along and learn along with them. And that's just not the case. With the adjusted model, they'll be able to set up those students to be able to work from home and then work through the Google Classroom to where they're not having to manage kids at the same time virtually and in person. And so we think the model is going to be a strong suit that way. Another question that we are kind of anticipating right now are how are siblings and step siblings with different last names assigned. And that's just going to be student's last name. It's kind of like a tiebreaker. Kyle talked about a tiebreaker. We got student's last name, then we're going to go to guardian's last name, and if that still doesn't clear things up, we're just going to work it out with the schools. But the schools are also going to understand that they're going to have to work with the feeder pattern schools as well. So if I've got a kid in 3rd grade and then a kid in 7th grade and then I've got a freshman, we need to make sure that all 3 principals are on the same page in regards to what day that we're going to assign those students, so that we're all on the same page and parents aren't having to manage different schedules. So how do students without technology complete assignments and receiving grades? And that was one of our big things that we ran into in the spring. And it kind of paralyzed us a little bit in regards to, what do we do with those students? And so it kind of got us stuck a little bit. And so we're going to get ahead of that and kind of clear up some expectations in regards to what goes on there. So we are going to encourage, at this hybrid option, schools to be able to loan devices out. And then we've also purchased 337,000 books for the district. And so we think that's also going to cut into possibly the need for as much device technology at home, to where they have books that they can take home with them, learn at home, and then kind of go back and forth. And then we're also going to offer a paper pencil option when available or when necessary. If there is an assignment, if I know my student does not have any access to technology, I'm going to provide that assignment for them, paper pencil, to be able to work at home and then bring that back to me as a teacher. So we're going to make sure that we're hitting the needs of our kids as those needs come up, and be a little bit more flexible in what we offer. Will student attendance be taken on remote learning days? Yes. And then will grades be given for remote learning assignments? Absolutely. So that accountability, those expectations are going to be there. And we saw that a lot in our teacher surveys, actually. They wanted there to be some accountability for the work that students were doing at home. And so we took that feedback and we're applying it to this hybrid option. So that is it for our hybrid option. Any questions? Any questions there before I turn things back over to Scott?
Andrew. Can you go over once again, because I've had a couple of people text me that they were confused, as far as if we have to go on the hybrid schedule, what that looks like for our employees, both our teachers and our assistants and our office workers and so forth. with their children?
Sure, Scott.
Yeah, so the 2 days, they'd have 2 days that they're in school, their children would be in school. The other 2 days, they would continue to return to their class, and then on Wednesday, they would be with their parent. So the day when we have no students in the building, when we're working remotely at home, they would go with their parent. The other days, they would be in their assigned classroom.
So the question that I'm getting is, because then they're alternating schedules, so are they getting then repeat instruction on those second days?
They would be working on the extension activity that the kids that they're in the cohort with, they would be working on that. So the teacher would, if they needed help with that, they would be working on that.
They may be set up on a computer within that classroom.
And they may,
doing
like,
the at-home work.
not to stereotype teachers' kids, but they also will be a great resource for teachers to help kids understand and work, shoulder partner with and things like that as well.
We've talked to allowing flexibility in buildings, so maybe a building wants to have those students that have already had that instruction be in the library or somewhere and working together on some things. And so there will be some flexibility in regards to their location, but they would be there. The expectation would be them working on that extension activity that they would normally be doing at home.
Right, but they're not getting the double instruction and so forth.
And Ms. Andrews, for our employees who have kids in pre-K, in Sumner County pre-K, they will be there as peers every day. So it's 5 days for them.
Okay. Thank you.
Yep.
Ms. Andrews, Mr. Wilkerson.
So, just so I understand it right, because we have a lot of blended families in Westmoreland. I've got mine, she's got hers, and we got ours together.
Mm-hmm.
So we're gonna look at them all going to school on the same day, regardless of whether they fall in the A through K or L through M. Okay.
Yeah. Yeah, the principals would just work together to make sure everybody's on the same page. Yeah, if they have different buildings that they're in.
Mr. Daniels.
Yeah. Just a quick question, and this kind of goes a little bit into the special education side. How are we going to manage students with IEPs? I mean, obviously IEPs, there's different levels of IEPs for students. Some of it is speech, some of it is other types of learning, but then there's those that have legitimate learning disabilities. So how are we going to manage that in hybrid situations, or even with the virtual learning?
So one of the things that, first I want to say, what we want and think is the best is for all the kids to be at school, especially our special ed students. I think that's really the best outcome. But we will work with families. What I'm waiting to see is how many would be selecting that virtual option, because we will have to change things up. We will have to, since that is the parents choosing, it's not that the IEP team selected that. Since a parent has now decided to do that, we will have to write a contingency learning plan of what we will be able to do while they've chosen this virtual option. We're needing some help with that, and that's a lot of what we will be purchasing next week, because we had some holes in what we were doing, so that we will be able to do a little bit more. For instance, not all our speech therapists had a laptop with a camera, so it was very awkward for them to do any kind of Zoom lessons or to do any, they would call that teletherapy, for speech therapy, occupational therapy, and physical therapy. So teletherapy is an option, but we have to first get our employees equipped so that they could actually do such a thing. So we have looked at where our holes are, and we're purchasing as much as we can to make that viable, should a parent choose that. I strongly recommend they come to school. I think that's
well, and I agree with that. But at the same time, I think when you get into the special education realm, you also run into students that may be more susceptible to the virus because of other health conditions that may be going on. So that's why I was curious about that, and also understanding that every every student has a different need, and you've really got to look and isolate and figure out which student, this student, what is it that we need to best provide to them to meet their needs and help them grow as a student as well. So, thank you.
I got the probably the impossible question. We've got all these options and all this great spectacular things put on the table tonight, which is wonderful. But if we got any forecast of what it actually is going to look like on our budget, and I understand that's probably it's more of a forecast, but I'm assuming we've already done that, and that's something that we can continue the conversation in the future, but I'm just kind of want to broach that subject now.
Well, we obviously there will be budgetary impact not only for some of the things that we've planned and we've already done. So a lot of the stuff you're hearing tonight, that's stuff that we knew as we built this year's budget we were going to tackle. And whether that's through the district with GP, federal, or CARES Act money, that's how we've kind of tried to think through paying for some of this additional infrastructure and things that we're doing. So a lot of this we already kind of have planned. If you look further forecasting into the future, a lot of it's going to depend on how the state reacts in January when the legislature convenes. And quite frankly, I've asked them, or our representatives, we've spoken a number of times since June, because I felt like if we had to have some alternate models, that they were going to have to be flexible, which they have been through TDOE. They were going to have to be flexible about how we capture enrollment and how we track enrollment and those types of things, because that was going to be new for us and new for them.
Yeah.
So some of the state board waivers and some of the things we've applied for as a district, probably every district in the state's applied for those same things. I feel good that they'll be granted, which will possibly reduce a good portion of that hit that may come in future years, because this year's allocation is already in the budget, and I think that's probably fine, even though when they went back in June they cut out a good bit of it. Our budget is based on that. I'll be more concerned in that regard, not with what we're doing for students, but how the state looks at our ADM for this year, for future year budgeting. Does that answer the question?
Yes, sir, it does. And again, at any time that we need to start as a board reaching out to those state level elected officials, we just need to have that conversation so that we can have those appropriate conversations also.
And I'll be glad as we get closer to January, that's when those decisions, when the legislature goes back, that's when those decisions I'm sure will be talked about, and probably, I have continuing conversations with Representative Lambert and Senator Hale. So, we will continue to discuss that as we move toward late fall and winter, hoping that as they see things come up or they introduce things for us and other school districts within committees, that hopefully they'll be mindful that we need to try to protect as much as possible the way that we're projecting ADM for future years.
Thank you. And I apologize for derailing your section.
Hey, no, you're good. You're good.
I've got just one more question. And I don't know, you may be, you or Scott may be hitting on this here as we wrap this up. We've talked a lot about the options for the students and the learning opportunities they have, and we've talked a lot about the training that we've done for the teachers. How are we, and I've had a number of teachers that have reached out to me, how are we handling the teachers that have concerns about being in the classroom, not just because they're personally fearful of the virus, and I know we all, with kids myself, I question, how safe is it to send my kids into the school? And I trust Lance 100% at Union that he's going to do everything he can to take care of the kids and make sure it's a safe environment. But we have teachers that have recovered from cancer, or that have had transplants, or that are caring for family members in their home, or have children that are immune compromised. How are we handling those situations with those teachers that are fearful of being in the classroom but don't want to lose their job.
Sure. So I think that's almost an individual conversation, and we've talked to principals, and we've are going to provide them guidance tomorrow morning. It's already ready to go. It's one of the one-pagers I was talking about, because we know those individuals that are concerned, and we've already had probably 25 or so 29 reach out to us through their principal, and they said, hey, you need to call HR. And so you almost have to have, like it should be, a conversation about how can we help you, what concerns you. Every one of them involves a different scenario, Andy, you know that. And some of them we will be able to certainly absolutely help. We're going to try to help everyone we can. We realize that we have to have teachers, obviously, on campuses to do a hybrid, or to do an all-in, or to do a remote. And so they are a critical workforce, and we're going to try our best to deal with each one of them as thoughtfully as possible. We try to help them and hope that we can do that for everyone. There's some very specific laws that were passed around COVID for HR, for workplace. And I'm sure you're aware of this, but that particular guidance and guiding document has some very specific questions that you have to ask and see if they qualify for certain things as far as leave and exemptions. And then if they don't, then do they qualify for FMLA because of what their doctor's providing, or whatever the case may be. If they don't qualify for FMLA, then it kind of goes to board policy and how we handle that. So it's almost very specific. You're going to have to go through the FCCRA first, and then you have to go through, were they directly impacted or not? Does the condition that they have, was it because of COVID or not? Was it pre-exist? It's all kind of stuff. But we'll work with everybody that contacts us to try to figure out, is there something that we can do to help?
But really, the best advice would probably be talk to your principal first and let them know, and then get direction from them through HR and follow the guidance.
And really, it's pretty simple for the principals. We've made that one pager that we're going to send them. They ask for that. They ask us to do that, and it says don't try to answer those questions because it's really rooted in law. So if a principal gets that from a teacher, just like the 29 already have, they said, hey, call HR at the district office. And then we literally, Naomi and her team, talks through every one of those.
All right. Thank you. Appreciate that.
All right. Thank you, Scott.
All right, these last 21 slides ought to go really well. I'm kidding. It's only 14. No. No, I just want to. Honestly, this is the last full slide, and then we have one last student video. I just want to say that first, I want to thank my team, because I thanked everybody else at the start, and I didn't thank my team. They've done amazing work. They've had to jump in so many different areas outside their expertise. They've been teasing Jeff that he's the principal of the virtual school, and he halfway believed it because they've all had to jump in and do so many different things. Chase and Jeff took over operations this spring to work on the backside, and they partnered with Chris and with a number of other people to just make everything flow so smoothly. And that really leads into that our learning must go on. As I've probably read 100 district plans and watched a bunch of videos. I watched one county's meeting for like 6 hours last night. That probably says more about me than it does anything else. But what I've come to understand is that you're either a learning institute, you're either a learner or you're not. And if you don't learn during COVID and gather feedback and make adjustments and learn to be flexible, then it doesn't go well for you. And I just commend our district, our school board, everybody for that commitment to learning. As I think about it, I just want to, as we go back, what I love most about our folks is they're committed to value and appreciate our kids as they come back. You heard it from Phyllis, you heard it from Mitch, you heard it from Ann. is that our first priority is to love on our kids and to let them know how welcome they are and how excited we are. You've already seen the creativity start to flow. You know, we normally do a big dance party. This year we're going to do it in the classroom, but we're still going to do those things that are meaningful, that are important. And I know our teachers and our principals will find ways to make school meaningful and wonderful and beautiful and exciting for our kids. And, you know, Miss China Center, if you've had a chance to meet her, she is really amazing. She started, I believe, this was her first year doing Amazing Shape, and she came in second in the world. And we had the opportunity to watch her early on. Philip, Christy, and I went over to judge, and she was just getting started. And I think she came in 5th at her school, and then within a couple months, was number 2 in the world. So she'll be a freshman at Gallatin High School next year, and this is her video about her dreams.
My name is China Center, and I'm 15 years old. I'm an upcoming freshman this year. Some of my accomplishments are I took place in the Global Amazing Shape and got 2nd place. I got 1st place in Rucker Stewart's Amazing Shape. I was ambassador for Rucker Stewart. I was on Baker and Ben. I also cheered for Rucker. And so some of my goals are to own my own law firm, be a lawyer, go to school, graduate from Harvard or Yale. And I think that education is a very important step in this because there's so much stuff that I don't know and so much stuff that I need to know to get into these schools. Education and children, they just go together, and honestly, without an education, I wouldn't have any goals because the school that I went to actually was the school and what was the thing that basically gave me the courage to even have any goals or to want success. It drove me to crave success, and my biggest fear is not being successful at all. And Rucker Stewart was the school for that.
You know, our kids give us the words that give us the drive for what we need to do. Our last slide is just a reminder. We shared this at every principal's meeting, and it said we're all in this together. We're in it together, and that exemplifies what we're about in Sumner County. Do you have any questions for us for instruction?
Mr. Daniels. No, I just wanted to say thank you. You can tell that this is a well thought out plan. There have been tons of hours, tons of thought that have gone into this. So thank you, Dr. Phillips. Thank you, staff, Scott, and your team, and everyone else, all the teachers and everybody else that had input. As we sat here for the last, 4.5 hours, you've tried to go through and you can tell that you've tried to think about everything in every scenario. And we know that we don't have an answer for everything. Something's going to happen. But I think it's great how we've always been able to adapt, and we've got a place to start. And it's a lot more comprehensive than I've seen from other school systems. And so thank you very much for all the work. I mean, you can tell this wasn't done on a Friday afternoon in a back room in a couple hours. This was led by a quality team, and I think that's one thing we've always been proud of in Sumner County, is that we've got great staff and great teachers, and they're trying to do their best to put a plan together to make sure our children get the best education possible. The other thing I think that's real important to remember is that because we've got different options, it's real important that as parents and as members of the community that we don't judge others for making a decision on how they want to learn, and whatever that reason is. I've tried real hard to stay off the social media because it's just a place for arguments. It is all it seems to be anymore these days. And people have different opinions and different decisions to make and what they think is best for them and their family. And so I think it's real important as members of the community that we remember that we have to make decisions that we think are best for us and our family. And somebody else has a different perspective of how to look at things, and that's okay. There's nothing wrong with that. And as staff, I know you guys are going to do a great job, and I know one of the first things you're going to do when you get into schools is let your kids know that that there are different opinions about a lot of different things, but our job here is to love everyone, treat everyone the same, and make sure everyone gets the same education. We know that kids sometimes take what they hear their parents say and they bring it to schools and they say it to other kids. But I have a lot of faith in our staff and our teachers that they're going to do what they need to do to make sure that everyone that's in the school is treated the same way, that there's no stigma, that there's no judgment, and that everybody has the opportunity to have a great year no matter what decision they make on how they want to learn. So thank you again for all that you've done to put this together.
Thank you, Ms. Daniels. Ms. Andrews?
I don't really want to follow that. Absolutely everything Edie said is absolutely spot on. Couldn't say it better myself. I do have another question, shocker. Just because that's our process and I have to think through. And I feel like we kind of, in some ways, breezed through the virtual option a little bit quickly. And I think I heard you say that we're looking through like Edgenuity for the virtual option, but then also we're talking about having our own teachers teach through it. So in the spring, when our high schoolers use Edgenuity, obviously it was not our own teachers.
Right.
And just the feedback that I got from that, from my own child and so forth, is that they didn't love it. I think it was a lot of because of who the instructors were and so forth. Can you kind of expand on that a little bit about what that's going to look like specifically then for our high school students that have already kind of gone through it, and especially if that's what their expectation is, what it will look different for us?
So K-8, it will be, as Kyle mentioned, with a Sumner County teacher. You know, we've hired some to fill the gap, and then, not to fill the gap, but to be available to deliver instruction. In high school, it's a little bit of a different beast because of the large number of course offerings. You can't staff that in the same way. So Edgenuity will be the primary deliverer of instruction. We will have teachers that will check in and work with students. I would say the difference between what we'll start in the fall in the virtual academy for high school and what we experienced in the spring is previously none of our teachers ever used Edgenuity unless they did credit recovery, because we primarily used Edgenuity for credit recovery and some initial offering courses that were hard to get. So in the span of about a week, our teachers had to learn how to use Edgenuity for the first time, and our kids had no acclimation to it. So I think the difference is like, one, you would be signing up for the virtual option, so you're opting into this format. I agree with you that we need to communicate that very clearly, but I think the difference would be is kids would get in on the front end. It's not something that's happening midway after they've been in a class doing personal finance or algebra 2 or something like that. They would be starting from the very beginning of the semester, knowing that this is my workload. We also have a lot more training tools and things like that, you know, whereas before we had to kind of roll that to scale in about a week, as opposed to now we've been able to step back and think about the best way to deliver that to kids.
Okay. And then just confirming too, you said fall, no AP offerings, looking at it though for the spring, because that will align with the AP tests that are always in the spring. And then also checking into whether or not the honors programs or honors courses will also be able to be provided.
Yeah, I actually talked to Dr. Alexander while we were meeting, and he's going to put together a proposal for how we can do honors classes. Basically, you have to build out a new class, and you have to add some components to it to get an honors. So he's going to put a proposal together tonight. We need as an instruction staff, we need to vet that to see if it's manageable. So I know we've got a tight timeline, so we'll hope to have an answer tomorrow.
Is it those, obviously our high school students have already, the ones that are returning, that were in our schools last year, have their schedule. Are there going, like, for the most part, all of those classes will then be within Edgenuity, or there may be some schedule changes that they're going to have to speak with their counselor
There will
on?
absolutely be some scheduling things. We can't match the depth and magnitude of what we have in our high school.
But will they then go through their high school counselors for that, or will there be a contact person for the virtual academy that they'll contact that will handle it?
Virtual, there'll probably be some overlap between the two because, as Kyle mentioned, we don't want anybody to fall through the cracks.
Right.
So we want communication like we do with everything else between the two. But, the guidance counselors won't necessarily have the full understanding of what we're doing in the virtual academy. So the course placement decision will take place in the virtual academy. The conversation will be back and forth between the two.
Okay. So parents need to be aware that virtual option is specifically with the high school, there'll be a little bit more work involved than K-8.
Yes, well, in terms of the online component with Edgenuity, yes.
Okay. And yes, I just want to say what Andy said. I mean, to be able to ask these types of questions and there be an answer because it's already been thought of is impressive. And it doesn't surprise me at all because I've seen the work. You know, we've had conversations throughout the summer of, you know, I think of something and say, hey, we need, you know, think about this. Yep, we're already doing it. And that has been encouraging. And as a parent that's going to have kids in school, I feel 100% confident that it doesn't matter whether you decide to do traditional in school or you decide to do virtual school, your kids are going to be well educated, and it is something that has been done well and thought through. And we also know that if an adjustment needs to be made, we're willing to do that and to see how things go. So I just appreciate everyone that was involved in the time that was dedicated for that.
Thank you.
Thanks, Scott. All right, Mr. Chairman, we're just about to wrap it up. I think, as I mentioned early at the beginning of the meeting, when we get to this point, I kind of want to talk to you a little bit about the summary and then what's next, kind of next steps. And so I think we're to that point of the program. Reiterate, I think, obviously, it's apparent that we have a very talented team. And many of those folks obviously are not here in the room tonight, but a lot of folks have touched this plan. A lot of folks have been very thoughtful, spent a lot of time around it. So I'm proud of the plan. I'm proud of our team. Always proud of our people. And I can't thank them enough for the hard work. If you look, and this is kind of what everybody wants to know, if you look at where we're at as far as the metrics of how we would decide about school, whatever box you fall into, you can't deny that the new case count has not been good. It's not been good. You know, just a month ago or so when we gave you the 3 columns and people wanted more detail and more information and we said it's coming, we knew that there was a great chance, obviously, that things would change. And they have, not for the better. We've had in the last several days 57, 75, 72, 23, which we think was a little bit of a glitch in the testing cycle, I think, but 48, 95, and then 63. So anytime in our mind that we get above that 50 run of new ones, new cases a day, it becomes troubling because that shows that we're trending, obviously, in the wrong direction. For me, when we look at what we're planning to do and what I would do for the start of school, I would recommend that we start in the hybrid. We're already above that 0.5 threshold that we talked about. We're trending more now in the 0.6, 0.62 run. We hope that goes down. I think everyone hopes that goes down. We hope tomorrow and the next day and the next day it starts going down. From all indications, whoever you talk to that look at these metrics, that probably is not what you will be told. If you ask a health professional, they think it will continue possibly to go up. The hybrid schedule, one thing that you need to know, we said that we were only going to do that in 10-day cycles. So really, if you look at where we're at today, if we decide to do that, where we're at today and how that will look 10 days after the start of school could be very different. And we're hopeful that that would be different in a good way. But at the end of the day, you know, it gives us an opportunity to start school, have the benefit of having half the students on campus so we can reorient students that have been out of school for 4.5 months back into a new environment. Even if it's familiar to them, we're going to have a lot of these protocols and processes that they're not used to. We're going to have to do some a little bit of training and some retraining about how to do things. Some of it will be totally new. Having the ability to do that when we only have half the students on campus at a time even for that short distance, 10 days, certainly I think will help us. It will help the principals. I believe it will help the students. I believe for the most part, I think parents will feel better about that. So we're not just starting out with everyone on campus at the beginning of the year. So based on where we're at with the current data, whether you look at any metric you want to use, the state's number for active cases, whether you use a 7-day, 4-day, you look at a trend, you look at a threshold, at the end of the day, we're above what we feel comfortable having everybody show up to school on the first day. I think that's what I'm trying to say. So my recommendation would be for us to do the hybrid as shown for that first 10-day window. After we get school started, within that first week, we will turn around and reevaluate again. And if we're trending down by then and we're back into a lower number of new cases, then we would certainly look at it again.
Ms. Hawkins.
You was first.
Oh, Mr. Daniels. Two quick questions. This may only apply to me personally up here, but I would assume with Union, since I have 3 kids at Union, they'll start with the hybrid schedule. Would that be 10 first 2 weeks, or would we wait to go to transition away from that until the rest of the school system transitioned as well?
Yes.
Okay, so we'd start in hybrid and just go until we get the all clear countywide.
Lance is going to have 1 additional week that he would have, because if we made the decision as a district, he would start in the hybrid, but he would stay on 1 additional week until it rolled off.
Perfect. The only other question I had is from a metric standpoint. I know when we look at this, and you said no matter what metric you look at, everything's trending up. I think if you watch the news or seen anything, you know that that's happening. If parents are looking for a specific metric or number to look at to help them kind of get an idea of, are we trending in the right direction? Is there a place to point them to? I know we had the metric that we used in June that we got a lot of feedback about what exactly is this and where the numbers are coming from. But is there something specific? I know in here you say look at the active cases, but also there's other stuff that you may know based on your conversations with other leaders in the state and local area. But is there a place that there's something that they could look at to have maybe a gauge or an idea?
Yeah, well, I think obviously the Tennessee Department of Health website has a bunch of county-specific information, and they can look there, and it's not hard. If you look at their trend line, if you look at the number of cases, active cases, total active cases, the way that most people that gave us feedback said, why don't you just use that one number, because we can find it every day. I think if you look at those over the course of the last month, you know, it's pretty hard not to recognize that obviously we're going up pretty substantially, especially in a 4 or 7 day window, week over week. You know, we have double the cases, active cases that we had just a month ago at the last board meeting. And so I think that's the simplest, easiest metric that everyone can find. I do think that having access, and this is the one kind of gray area that I don't think there's any way for people to do this the way that we can get some of that information, but like Mr. Duncan said, if you're on those unified command calls, if you have access to those, that's a lot of good information that's very specific to Sumner County, from first responders, from medical professionals that are on those calls, representing the hospitals, and so you can get a little bit more detailed information about whether those case counts are turning into hospitalizations and other things. And the state has some stuff on their website about that too.
Then I guess just the last follow-up question to that would be, especially with parents looking, we're starting on a hybrid schedule and they're trying to figure out, you know, how will I know when we're going to go back to more of a traditional schedule? How much notice will they have? I mean, I know we're saying right now 2 weeks. Will, you know, based on trending, I think everybody, like you said, if you look, you can kind of see trend lines starting to plateau or go down over a 7, 14, 20-day period. That kind of gives you an idea of which direction you're heading. But will they have, hey, I know this is the second week, at the beginning of the second week, will they know, you know, we're likely to go back to traditional next week, or will it be, you know, I know we do a really good job of communicating, but, you know, I think parents are worried that they're gonna find out on Friday that I
Yeah.
need childcare for the next week.
Yeah, we're thinking that we would try to make that decision as early in the week preceding the change as possible. So if you look, typically Tuesdays have been a pretty high mark day for new cases. And so we would like to get at least Tuesday's data to let people know for the following Monday. Does that make sense? So
It does.
we would like to at least capture that much of that week. So you would be in the first week in hybrid, and then the second week, you know, we'd go through that Tuesday before we made an announcement about the next 10-day cycle.
Okay, yeah, thank you. And I just think that's what parents are gonna be curious
Sure.
about, is if there's not one specific number, and I think we all know we can't just look at one specific number and say, oh, that's the answer to everything, but at least to have an idea of when they can start expecting that, hey, if we go to hybrid, it's gonna be at least 2 weeks, you know, that you're looking at that schedule, but you'll know, you know, hopefully far enough in advance, like you just said, you know,
Yeah.
to communicate to them, you know, that the Wednesday before the next week, you know, you should know definitively whether we're gonna go another week or another 2 weeks.
Right.
You know, push it forward. All right,
Right.
thank you very much.
Yes, sir.
That was Hawkins.
Okay, thank you. 2 things. Number one, I would like to say again that I feel like masks need to be required. And if they can't wear a mask, then wear a face shield. And as far as you were saying, what are you going to do if they don't? Well, what are you going to do if they don't wear pants to school? I think that you have the ability to set a dress code, and this is something that's life or death for some people, especially teachers. I think it's important. It's not, you know, getting in trouble for chewing gum. It's endangering other people, and I think it's that important that it needs to be mandatory. And secondly, I know we had talked earlier that no matter what decision is made, there are going to be people who are angry. And I acknowledge that, and I want to say that I'm angry too. I'm not angry at you, I'm not angry at the board, I'm angry at the virus. And the virus has stolen our freedom. Look at us right now. We can't go to school normally, we can't go to work, we can't do what we normally do. And I refuse to accept the notion that this is the new normal. It doesn't have to be, if people will do the right thing. The virus doesn't live long outside the human body. It dies. And once it's inside the human body, it does one of 2 things. It either kills the host or the host kills it. And in either case, at the end, the virus is dead. The only way it perpetuates and goes on is if it finds a new host. And the way it does that is through respiratory. So I feel, and I know it can be done. You look at other countries, look at Taiwan. Taiwan has a population of 24 million people. They had a go-round with SARS a few years ago. So when this came out, they knew exactly what to do. And they locked down their whole country for 2 COVID cycles. And as of July 10th, they had 449 confirmed cases and 7 deaths in the whole country of 24 million. We have the ability to kill this virus if everyone will do their part. I want to see solidarity in this community, people coming together for the sake of each other and wear a mask. I get so unhappy when I go to the grocery store and I see people are just very cavalier about walking around. They don't need to wear a mask. Well, yes, they should, because that's how we're going to get back to school normally. That's how we're going to get back to work, is if everybody does their part and pitches in and doesn't make it about themselves, but makes it about our community. I want my community back. I want normal back. I don't want a new normal. So that's all I have to say.
Thank you, Ms. Hawkins. Anybody else? Oh, Ms. Andrews.
One more question, sorry. I know, my time's expired. One more question though, if we're going on the hybrid and the first week of school, we have the election,
We do.
how does that affect?
Just those students won't go that day.
Okay,
So students in the first week, we talked about that. We don't want to confuse people by putting out a first week schedule and a second week schedule.
Okay.
It's just gonna be the students that go that Thursday won't go, they'll just go one day that week.
and there won't be school online for them either as well?
That's right. Be out like we would be if it's traditional school.
Okay, I'm done.
Okay. Everybody else done? All right. Mr. Gregory's looking at me saying, wrap the gavel. I got one more thing. I've been quiet all night. I got a text a while ago that said, how did y'all stay after 9 o'clock? There was supposed to be a policy there. Well, Mr. Johnson looked it up earlier and it does not apply to study sessions. So that's how we got by with that. So, I want to thank everybody too. Thank you for your diligence and thank you for all the things that y'all have done to, when I'm getting questions from people, I'm really truthfully saying, look guys, we're in good hands. These people know what they're doing. They're professionals and they're the best in the business. And I stand by that. Y'all are. Y'all have learned to dance in the rain. And so I appreciate you. We are adjourned.
Thank you.